Chapter 55. All Sinners. The competition for the top 10 on the surface had ended, and everything was back on track. Not only had the Qin family retained their position as the strongest family, but they had also risen to 7th place. This was a pleasant surprise for the Qin family. Regarding Qin Feng's final action of surrendering, the upper echelons of the Qin family all nodded unanimously, believing that this was the safest way. It was also because of Qin Feng's actions that the Shao family, the Long family, the Su family, and the Ye family, the top 4 families, expressed their goodwill to the Qin family and increased their business cooperation. In the end, even the Lei and Pang families began to get close to the Qin family. After all, everyone knew that as long as Qin Feng was around, the rise of the Qin family was only a matter of time. The Qin family, which had been trembling and on the verge of collapse, instantly became much more powerful. All the other families extended olive branches to them, hoping to cooperate with them. Time passed, and 5 days passed. During this period, Qin Feng enjoyed the most peaceful time of his life. He enjoyed the happy time that people of his age should enjoy. After 5 days of indulgence, Qin Feng was somewhat at a loss. He had avenged his sister and saved his position in the family. For a moment, he didn't know what to do and lost his direction. On this day, someone from the Treasure Heaven Pavilion delivered a letter. After Qin Feng opened it and read it, he nodded. Late that night, he groped his way out of the clan in the dark and arrived at the agreed location in the letter. Not long after, a carriage arrived. "Little fellow, get on the carriage." The coachman was an old man with loose hair. When he opened his mouth, he revealed a mouthful of old yellow teeth. Qin Feng nodded and entered the carriage. Qin Feng was surprised. He looked at Ouyang, she who was wrapped in a black robe in the carriage. If it wasn't for the unique fragrance, Qin Feng wouldn't have recognized her. The black cloak was lifted, revealing Ouyangxi's devastatingly beautiful face. She smiled at Qin Feng and said to the old man, "Uncle Wei, let's go. What's the matter? Why are you being so secretive?" Qin Feng sat down, looked at Ouyangxi and said, "It's a secret that not many people in the city of Sin know. Do you think we need to keep it a secret?" Ouyangxi smiled. Qin Feng was startled as he stared at Ouyangxi. Although the other party's smile was still the same, he could clearly see that the Ouyangxi today was more profound and serious than usual. Qin Feng nodded. He glanced at the smaller black-robed man beside her and asked, "Who is this?" "Qin Feng, do you know when we started paying attention to you?" Ouyangxi asked. He didn't understand why Ouyangxi would ask such a question. "Isn't it after the selection?" "No." Ouyangxi shook her head and said, "To be precise, it's at the bottom of the spiritual pool. It's funny, if you didn't take advantage of little Jing, we might not have noticed you." Hearing that, Qin Feng hurriedly waved his hand and corrected him. "I didn't molest her. I just didn't know she was a girl." Otherwise, at this point, Qin Feng suddenly stopped. "Otherwise what?" Ouyangxi smiled and asked. Qin Feng shrugged and said, "She's your sister. I won't talk about it." "Nothing, just tell the truth." Ouyangxi said, "My sister is too stubborn. She has some shortcomings. You can't change that." Hearing that, Qin Feng smiled and suddenly said in a low voice, "Your sister is like that. She doesn't have any meat on her body. What should be protruding isn't protruding, and what should be concave isn't concave. So even if you give it to me, I'm not interested." Plus, with her personality, she always uses the title of the city leader's little princess to threaten people. Who wouldn't be annoyed by that? "Is that so? You told me to tell the truth." Just as Qin Feng spoke, he suddenly felt that there was something wrong with his voice. He slightly turned his head and saw that the smaller black-robed man slowly pushed open his cloak, revealing a small face that still looked slightly young. "Ouyang Jing?" Looking at Ouyang, she who was trying to hold back her laughter, Qin Feng's mouth twitched. He turned his head and looked outside the window. The carriage slowly arrived at a manor. Feeling the carriage stop, Qin Feng's face slowly lifted. "Let's go," Ouyangxi said, and got off the carriage first. Qin Feng nodded and smiled at Ouyang Jing, who had been gritting her teeth for more than 10 minutes. Long time no see. Then he quickly got off the carriage. Soon, Ouyang Jing's screams came from the carriage. Following behind Ouyang Shi, Qin Feng calmly looked around. This was a huge manor. He didn't know where this place was. Ouyang Shi was silent the whole way and didn't say a word. After 10 minutes, they arrived at a stone pavilion on the water. At this time, there was a figure sitting inside. As Qin Feng expected, this person was the city leader of the city of Sin, Ouyang Qing Tian. "Greetings, city lord." Qin Feng hurriedly bowed. "No need to be so formal." Ouyang Qing Tian waved his hand and signaled Qin Feng to sit. After a moment of silence, Ouyang Qing Tian asked, "Qin Feng, do you know why the city of Sin's system is so cruel?" "Because the blood of sinners flows in our veins." Pausing for a while, Qin Feng said, "As a slave, the only thing that people value is strength. Therefore, to get rid of the fate of being enslaved, you have to become stronger and make your family one of the top 10 families. Because you are the descendants of sinners? Then why are we the ones enslaving you?" Ouyang Qing Tian asked. Hearing this, Qin Feng was silent. We are all birds in a cage. None of us are more noble than the other." Ouyang Qing Tian laughed at himself. "You are all birds in a cage under our control. Who knows that we are also being raised by others?" Hearing this, Qin Feng's heart shook. He looked at Ouyang Qing Tian in confusion. In this primitive land, other than those who live in the capital and call themselves angels, everyone else is a slave. Not just the city of Sin. Everyone on this land is the descendant of sinners. The blood of sinners flows in their veins. The city leader seems to be able to take care of you, but in reality, we are all the same. We are all food raised by those who call themselves angels. However, we are middle-class slaves, so we could take care of lower-class slaves. To put it bluntly, everyone is a slave. Ouyang Qingtian's words caused Qin Feng to be deeply shaken, shattering all of his knowledge. The high and mighty city lord who ruled over a city was actually also a slave. Everyone on this land is enslaved by the angels in the capital? That's a bit exaggerated. Qin Feng said in disbelief. The capital is just the center of the primitive land. There are 10 big cities around it. How can a single capital have the ability to enslave everyone? Absolute power. Ouyang Qing Tian said. His tone was bitter and helpless. There is a God living there. His power is boundless. In the entire primitive land, no one can be his opponent. God? Qin Feng was deeply shocked. It was the first time he heard such a title. That is absolute control. No one can challenge the dignity of a god. Ouyang Qing Tian said. So he used force to rule this land and reduced everyone to slaves? Chapter 56. Saint Ruin hearing Ouyang Qingtian's words, Qin Feng fell silent. He had always thought that they were the slaves of the city of Sin. Their ancestors had made a huge mistake, so their descendants were all slaves. He had always thought that this was ridiculous. But after hearing Ouyang Qingtian's words, he realized that what he knew was only the tip of the iceberg. The entire primitive land was a slave, the descendants of sinners. The city of Sin was only a small part of the vast land. The entire world was a slave. Who knows how many years have passed since our ancestors made a mistake? Why should we be punished? Qin Feng said, his voice filled with anger and hatred. So the tragedy of the primitive land originated from this. Your complaints are meaningless. Ouyang Qingtian shook his head and said, You didn't call me here just to tell me this, did you? Qin Feng said. Ouyang Qingtian secretly praised and smiled. Why do we become slaves? What did our ancestors do wrong? There's no point in arguing about these things. No one will investigate things that happened so long ago. The truth has already happened. As the descendants of sinners, what we need to do is to overthrow this slavery system. Ow! Qin Feng frowned. Isn't that God invincible under the heavens? Ha! The so-called invincibility is only in this primitive land. Ouyang Qingtian smiled and shook his head. In this vast world, the primitive land is just a wave. Outside of this, there is an even more vast primitive world. Our ancestors mentioned that only by leaving this land filled with evil can we overthrow this slavery system and free all the slaves. Leave? Qin Feng was stunned. He had never thought about this question. Yes, we have to leave. Ouyang Qingta nodded and said in a serious tone, in this place, no matter how talented you are, it is very difficult to grow. Since ancient times, this land has produced countless geniuses. But if they didn't die young, they were subdued by the empire and became their pawns. Here, no matter who you are, no matter how strong you are, or how amazing your potential is, the imperial capital will never allow us to grow and threaten them. Sir City Lord, do you want me to leave this land? Qin Feng asked. That's right. Here, only have two endings. Either you die, or you become their puppet. But I don't know how to leave this place. Qin Feng shook his head. And all my clansmen are here. Qin Feng, compared to the suffering of all living beings, the sorrow and joy of a race, how insignificant are they? Ouyang Qingtian shook his head. He looked at Qin Feng and solemnly said, you are someone who has the qualifications to leave, and you also have the qualifications to bring us hope. Could it be that your structure is limited to the small Qin clan? Even if it's as you wish, how long can you protect the Qin family? You should know that the stronger you are, the faster you will die. Those people in the capital will not allow anyone who can threaten them to grow. Qin Feng was silent, and his hands were tightly clenched. The great slave conscription, which occurs once every 20 years, is about to begin. When that time comes, most of the young people with potential in the major cities, villages, and towns will be conscripted. Some will be enslaved and treated like beasts to be played with. This kind of person is almost labeled with the label of death. Some talented people may be able to escape this fate, but they will be transferred into the army and become a force for them to expand their territory, resist the beast race, and rule over us. They will never be able to return to their clansmen until they die on the battlefield or in a foreign land. Qin Feng clenched his fists tightly. He didn't dare to imagine what kind of tragic end it would be. The young people of the 10 great clans will be conscripted. Only those with strength and talent will be conscripted. Ouyang Qingtian sighed and said bitterly, in a sense, the more talented a person is, the more miserable their life will be. Is this the sorrow of being a slave? Do you know what it feels like to see those young and energetic people strive to reach the top and blossom with their own light? Do you know what it feels like to be powerless and unable to change their fate? How can I leave this place? Qin Feng asked softly. The only pure land in the primitive land, St. Ryuin, Ouyang Qingtian said. That's the only place where those people in the capital can still maintain a little respect. St. Ryuin? Qin Feng was stunned. He had never heard of such a place. Even I don't know about that place, but I know that only St. Ryuin knows the way to leave this place. Before the great slave conscription begins, every place will do everything possible to send some talented people with amazing potential to St. Ryuin. So I'm not the only one. Qin Feng was shocked. Of course, in this land, there are countless geniuses. You're only one of the people from the city of Sin who has the right to enter St. Ryuin. Ouyang Qingtian nodded. Qin Feng was silent for a while and said, if that's the case, then why send all those young people away? That way, they can avoid this disaster. Send them to where? Ouyang Qingtian shook his head helplessly and said bitterly, do you think those people in the capital only control us with strength? You underestimate their information network. It can be said that they know everything about every place like the back of their hand. They have a record of all the geniuses. In order to prevent those who threaten them from rising, they have put in a lot of effort. Plus, those who are sent away are not simply leaving. Qin Feng was startled and asked, what do you mean? Ouyang Qingtian was silent for a while and said, when you leave the city of Sin, I will announce to the public that you have become a fugitive from the city of Sin. When that happens, in the entire primitive land, other than St. Ryuin, there will be no place for you to stay. In other words, if you cannot successfully enter St. Ryuin, there will only be one outcome for you, and that is to die on the streets. Qin Feng's body shook. Why would you do that? You want the entire city of Sin to die with you because of your departure? Qin Feng fell into a deep silence. After a while, he said, "What will happen to the Qin family? At least, compared to you staying here, they will be in a better situation. How long until the great slave conscription? 1 month. During this time, you will stay here as a member of the training camp. I will also do my best to increase your capabilities." Ouyang Qingtian said in a serious tone. "Qin Feng, this secret is only known by a very small number of people in the city leader's palace, as well as the executors. You cannot reveal this to outsiders, including the people closest to you." Qin Feng nodded and suddenly asked, "You? Am I not the only one who is leaving?" Ouyang Qingtian smiled and clapped his hands. "Come out." Chapter 57. Assassination. Qin Feng thought he was the only one here. He didn't expect there to be other people he was familiar with. Xiao Yun, Long Zhan, and Su Qin walked in with serious expressions on their faces. They weren't like the Qin family. Many of their people would be taken away. The three of them and Xiao Shi will leave with you and become escaped slaves of the city of Sin. Ouyang Qingtian said. Looking at the three of them, he said, "I have told you the pros and cons. Do you want to be taken away with your people and accept your tragic end? Or do you want to fight back and change this unfair fate? The decision is in your hands. But I have to say one thing first. This secret is only limited to the few of you. If someone doesn't keep it a secret and spreads it, then everyone who knows will die." Xiao Yun and the other two's bodies shook, then they nodded heavily. "Mayor, don't worry. The mission we have is more important than the rise and fall of our families. We know what to do," Xiao Yun said seriously. Hearing this, Ouyang Qingtian nodded and said helplessly, "Remember, the journey to the Saint Ruin will be very difficult. Not only will the army from the kingdom and the assassination organizations hunt you down, but the city of Sin will also send people to kill you. When that happens, you will be escaped slaves. Even the army from the city of Sin will not show you any mercy. Whether you can live, whether you can wash away your identity as escaped slaves and erase the stain you brought to your families, the only way is for you to reach the Saint Ruin alive and find a way to leave this place. When you are strong enough, you can come back and overthrow this inhumane slavery system." The few of them nodded solemnly. "Okay, you can all go back." On the way back, Qin Feng's heart was heavy. Once he left the city of Sin, he would be an escaped slave. Not only would his life be in danger, but his family would also be humiliated. But if he didn't leave, his fate would be even worse, because no one, no force, could fight against the people from the kingdom. How sad! He raised his head and sighed. Only now did he understand that perhaps only by living a normal life could he live a peaceful life. People like them who were called geniuses only had two endings. Either they would be killed while escaping, or they would return one day. "What, are you scared?" Ouyang Shi asked with a smile. "It's not that I'm afraid. It's just that I feel a little uncomfortable coming into contact with so much at once." Qin Feng shook his head and glanced at Ouyang Shi, who was calm from beginning to end. He curled his lips and said, "I'm afraid you already knew." Ouyang Shi nodded and said, "To tell you the truth, when I found out about this secret, I was even more uncomfortable than you. I even begged my father desperately. However, as we gradually grew up, we understood that some things were unavoidable. As slaves, we could only face difficulties head-on or submit to the arrangements of fate." Qin Feng nodded. Some things were destined to happen, and there was no escape. They could only face it head-on. After getting off the carriage, Qin Feng walked toward his family. He was thinking about what he should do next. He had to escape, but he couldn't be reckless. He had to plan everything. As he walked, Qin Feng suddenly felt that something was wrong. This place seemed to be too quiet. He raised his head and scanned the surroundings. His brows slowly furrowed. "What's going on?" His frown deepened as he felt an inexplicable sense of unease. Boom! Suddenly, a terrifying wave of spiritual energy swept over. Qin Feng didn't even think and rolled a few meters away. When Qin Feng looked back, his scalp went numb. The place where he was standing previously had a huge crater. Fierce spiritual energy spread out. Without a doubt, If Qin Feng didn't dodge, he would have died. Yin family. Soon, Qin Feng knew that someone from the Yin family wanted to kill him. Damn it. He cursed in his heart. He was too careless and didn't think of this. The Yin family wouldn't dare to take revenge on him openly, but they would definitely make a move in the dark. What sharp senses! In the darkness, a cold laughter rang out as a figure slowly walked out. Which expert from the Yin family are you? Qin Feng forced himself to calm down and asked. Yin Run, Cloudy Day's father. Yin Ren smiled. However, that smile made Qin Feng's heart go cold. Are you here to take revenge for Cloudy Days? Qin Feng asked. That's right. Do you know how much trouble your actions will bring to the Yin family? Qin Feng reminded. Ha! Yin Ren smiled. After you die, I will dispose of your corpse. No one will know where you went, and no one will know that I was the one who did it. Yin Ren walked over step by step. Powerful spiritual energy surrounded him. He stared at Qin Feng as if he was looking at a dead man. A cruel smile appeared on his face. My son has already been defeated by you, but you still killed him. Qin Feng, tell me, how should I torture you to appease the hatred in my heart? When Cloudy Days schemed against my sister, he was destined to die. At that time, did you ever think about whether you were cruel? In this world where the strong prey on the weak, strength is the reason. Do you still hope that others will go easy on you because they sympathize with you? That's right. Qin Feng nodded. I'm stronger than Cloudy Days. I won't go easy on him because I sympathize with him. That's right. I'm stronger than you, so I won't go easy on you. Yin Ren indifferently glanced at Qin Feng. He stretched out a finger, and spiritual energy quickly revolved around it. Do you have any last words? Qin Feng's expression gradually turned serious. From the strength of Yin Ren's aura, he had clearly reached the late stage of sea expansion. He even had the qualifications to break through to the bone-strengthening realm. Although his spiritual energy was not weaker than that of a sea expansion expert, Qin Feng did not have the confidence to face such an expert head-on. Qin Feng's eyes stared intently at Yin Run as his body continuously trembled. He knew that the attacks of a veteran expert like Yin Run, regardless of whether it was speed, strength, or battle experience, were far superior to the opponents he had encountered in the past. Therefore, at this moment, he could only focus all of his attention on the slight movements of every part of his opponent's body in order to discern his opponent's next attack. Indifferently glancing at Qin Feng, who was on guard, Yin Ren coldly smiled. He raised his arm, and a long black whip, like a viper coming out of its hole, slashed down at Qin Feng. Looking at the long whip that seemed to have crossed a distance of over 10 meters, Qin Feng's eyes shrunk slightly. He slowly exhaled, and when the long whip reached the top of his head, his body suddenly shifted slightly to the left. The long whip, with a strong wind, struck down at Qin Feng's clothes. Finally, it heavily hit the stone floor, leaving a deep crack. After avoiding Yin Ren's attack, Qin Feng's expression was extremely serious. His feet heavily stepped on the ground, and his body slightly arched. Immediately, like an arrow released from a bow, he violently rushed toward Yin Run. The short distance of 10 meters was almost covered in the blink of an eye. However, just as Qin Feng was about to enter the attack range, a strong chi suddenly came from behind him. His expression changed slightly. Qin Feng's body suddenly pounced, and the long whip flew out from behind his head. His body pouncing forward, Qin Feng fiercely waved his palm at the ground. A tyrannical, invisible chi heavily bombarded the ground. Suddenly, a repulsive force sent his body into the air. Chapter 58. The Battle of Yin Ren. Looking indifferently at the spiritual energy spear that was piercing through the air, Yin Ren's hand trembled slightly. The long whip in his hand suddenly turned around. Finally, as if it had a mind of its own, it turned around and shot towards the spiritual energy spear. Ding! When the tip of the spear came into contact with the whip, a clear sound of collision was immediately emitted. Soon after, the mental energy spear was shattered inch by the enormous recoil. Spirit fragments fell one after another, while Rin's long whip shot toward Qin Feng, who was still in midair. But at this moment, those mental fragments suddenly turned into mental blades that carried a sharp aura and swept towards Rin. Because it was too sudden, Rin couldn't avoid it, so he hurriedly retracted his whip and stirred it fiercely, sweeping away the spiritual energy. Taking advantage of this gap, Qin Feng quickly landed on the ground and took a few steps back. The spiritual energy gathered and turned into various sharp weapons that floated around his body. The killing intent in Rin's heart intensified when he saw this scene. It had only been a few days, but Qin Feng's control over his mental strength had reached such a level. He was undoubtedly much stronger than when he had fought with Cloudy Days. Be it for public or private reasons, he couldn't keep such a person alive. The killing intent in his heart surged, and Rin's movements became even fiercer. The long whip was like an arm as it shot toward Qin Feng. Spirit Fist. Qin Feng punched out, and his spiritual energy quickly permeated the air, turning into a spiritual gauntlet. At the same time, the power of the three tyrants of the Fist Emperor was integrated into it. Bang! After a fierce collision, Qin Feng was forced back 3 steps, while Rin didn't move an inch. It can actually be fused. Qin Feng was overjoyed. He only thought that it would be difficult to resist Rin's attack with just his mental power, so he wanted to combine the King of Fighters' 3 tyrants to increase his strength. He did not expect to succeed. However, Qin Feng wasn't happy at all because the difference between him and Rin was too great. Even so, it didn't have much of an effect. Qin Feng retreated again, keeping a distance from Rin. He could only use his mental power, and close combat was very disadvantageous for him. As if he knew what Qin Feng was thinking, Rin sneered. He tapped his foot on the ground and shot toward Qin Feng. At the same time, he brandished his long whip and stabbed it towards Qin Feng. Qin Feng's pupil shrank. His psychic power burst out, and a series of psychic weapons shot out. Scram! Rin shouted as he swung his long whip to block the attack of the spiritual weapon. Then he quickly closed in on Qin Feng and fiercely struck out with his palm. Qin Feng's body trembled, and the power of water turned into a sailor that emerged from his chest, while he quickly retreated. Bang! Rin smashed Sailor into pieces with his palm before landing on Qin Feng, who was unable to retreat in time. Whoosh! As Qin Feng retreated, a psychic blade quickly slashed across Rin's arm, bringing out a string of blood. The sharp pain from his arm made Rin furious. He was actually injured by Qin Feng. After retreating for a dozen steps, Qin Feng was finally able to disperse the power of Rin's palm. Looking at Rin's wound, he shook his head inwardly. He originally wanted to cut off Rin's arm, but after receiving that palm attack, he lost control of his mental power. When Rin rushed over again, Qin Feng was already alert. His mental power turned into chains and coiled around Rin's body. At the same time, he struck out with his palm. The power of water supported a few crescent moons and ruthlessly struck Rin's body. Whoosh! With Rin trapped, Qin Feng didn't dare to hesitate. He used the body-changing steps and quickly approached Rin. He circulated the Fist Emperor's 3 tyrants to the extreme and crazily attacked Rin. A muffled sound was heard. Rin's body kept retreating, while Qin Feng continued to close in. He kept throwing out punches, not giving Rin a chance to breathe. After being injured one after another, Rin was furious. He roared, and a fierce spiritual power burst out from his body. He broke the psychic chains and sent Qin Feng flying. Swish! The long whip in his hand ruthlessly lashed out. Feeling the power of the long whip, Qin Feng's face changed. He gathered his mental power and protected his body. At the same time, the power of water attached to his body. Bang! The long whip scattered the mental energy and heavily lashed onto Qin Feng's back, causing water to splatter everywhere. Qin Feng's body staggered. His back was burning with pain. He endured the pain and used his mental power to move his body, landing far away. That was close. Looking at his injuries, Qin Feng let out a sigh of relief. His injuries were not serious. Fortunately, his spirit power had blocked off part of the power of the long whip, and the water power on the surface of his body had been removed a little. Otherwise, even if he did not die, he would have been seriously injured. A late-stage sea expansion realm expert is indeed terrifying. He sighed. Even after using all his means, he still couldn't resist. In Ian Rin's eyes, his sigh was undoubtedly a mockery. He was a veteran expert, and his strength was far above Qin Feng's. Yet, he was injured in the battle, and the other party was still dissatisfied. The naked humiliation caused Ian Rin to become furious, and the spiritual power in his body swept out like a flood breaking through a dam. It whistled toward Qin Feng. Qin Feng's face turned cold. He quickly retreated. At the same time, he operated his mental power and divided it into dozens of spiritual nets, spreading them out one by one. Ian Rin's spiritual power tore through the spiritual nets, but also consumed most of its power. When it reached Qin Feng, its power was less than 30%, and it was blown away by Qin Feng's fist. Go to hell. Having just resolved Ian Rin's attack, Qin Feng felt a chill on his skin. He felt a fatal threat. Then let's see who is more unafraid of death. A crazy smile appeared on his face. The scattered spiritual power turned into sharp weapons, shooting toward Ian Rin from all directions. If Ian Rin wanted to continue to kill him, he would inevitably be drowned by his own spiritual weapons. He would be severely injured, or even die. Facing Qin Feng's suicidal fighting style, which he would only use when he was in a desperate situation, Ian Rin naturally couldn't fight him head-on. He quickly retreated. The spiritual power that was shooting toward him suddenly stopped when it was less than 10 centimeters away from Qin Feng. Then, it changed its direction and shot toward Ian Rin. Ian Rin shot out both of his palms. Vigorous spiritual power surged, shattering those spiritual weapons. Pucci. 2 spiritual weapons suddenly attacked from the left and the right. Ian Rin quickly dodged, but his arms were still scratched. After being injured by Qin Feng consecutively, Ian Rin's eyes were extremely gloomy. He stared at Qin Feng, took a deep breath, and calmed his furious emotions. He said indifferently, as expected of the mysterious spiritual power, "With such a huge gap between us, you can still contend with me. But this is the end." Ian Rin looked at Qin Feng indifferently. At this moment, Qin Feng's heart raced. An indescribable feeling of death enveloped him. He gritted his teeth and mobilized all of his spiritual power to protect his body. He also pushed the water god technique to the limit. The sound of water splashing was like a river, endless. Boom! An even more terrifying aura burst out from Ian Rin's body. The oppressive wind caused Qin Feng's body to tremble uncontrollably. Despair. Ian Rin bellowed as he charged forward with his unparalleled spiritual energy. Qin Feng's body trembled even more violently. It was difficult for him to control his spiritual power and the power of water. Under the pressure of Ian Rin's powerful spiritual power, they collapsed. Strong Bone Realm. Qin Feng's heart was filled with despair. This guy had actually entered this realm. How could he contend with him? However, at this moment, a black light suddenly shot out from his palm. The black light turned into a black mist. It jumped like a flame and directly enveloped Ian Rin, who was rushing toward him. Immediately after, a scream mixed with deep fear rang out from inside. Chapter 59. Entering the city lord's mansion, Qin Feng was stunned by the sudden change of events, but he quickly recovered and rejoiced in his heart. It was the demon eye. The old devil had made his move. Within the black mist, Ian Rin fearfully looked at the black eye floating in front of him and said, "Who are you? Let me go, or you won't be able to bear the wrath of the Ian family." "Ian family? You're at most in the bone-strengthening realm." The demon eye laughed mockingly and said, "For someone like me who has killed a god, your threat is really childish." The demon eye pointed and the black mist surged, eroding Ian Rin bit by bit. Ian Rin painfully screamed. He couldn't believe that there was such a terrifying person following Qin Feng. No wonder he rose so quickly. It turns out that there's a mysterious expert helping him. No, I must spread this news. With this thought, Enren's spiritual energy frantically swept out to resist the black mist's invasion. It's just a small trick. The demon eye faintly smiled, and the black mist suddenly surged violently, enveloping Enrun in a domineering manner. Ah! Enren miserably screamed, but it didn't take long for his voice to weaken and finally disappear. Finally, the black mist disappeared, and the demon eye returned to Qin Feng's palm. Bits of black ash fell down. Qin Feng's mouth was wide open. The bone-strengthening realm Enren was burned to ashes just like that. The demon eye actually had such a terrifying fighting strength. He always thought that this old thing could only display its power after occupying his body. If you're so powerful, why didn't you make your move earlier? I almost died in his hands. Qin Feng angrily said, but aren't you still alive? The demon eye faintly smiled and said, a powerful enemy can bring great danger, but at the same time, it can also temper yourself. Try to recall whether your control of the water god technique and spiritual energy has improved. Hearing this, Qin Feng was stunned. Thinking back to the battle just now, it seemed that it was true. With his current strength, it was impossible for him to fight against an expert like Enrun. But not only did he do it, he also injured him several times. If it wasn't for the bone, strengthening realm strength, he could still hold on for a while. A powerful opponent has stimulated your potential, Demon Eye said. Qin Feng nodded. He had indeed benefited greatly from the battle with Enrun, and he now possessed the qualifications to fight against experts. Looking at the ashes on the ground, Qin Feng sneered. He struck out with his palm, and a gust of wind blew. Instantly, the ashes drifted in the air and scattered in the wind. In family, I will settle this debt with you sooner or later. A cold killing intent flashed in Qin Feng's eyes. After silently killing Enrun, Qin Feng quickly returned to his family. Old devil, how can I quickly open up my Qi Si? Qin Feng asked. After his battle with Enrun, Nie Tian was well aware of his weakness, which was that his spirit energy was too weak. He hadn't dared to use his spirit energy in the previous battle, and had only been able to use his psychic power and the water god incantation. This caused his strength to be severely imbalanced. Moreover, he only had less than a month before he had to leave. Without the protection of the City of Sin, that would be the time when he would be truly in danger. He had to use this time to increase his cultivation as much as possible. The Sea Opening Pill can allow you to successfully open up your Qi Si. However, you have just opened up your ninth spiritual vein, and your strength isn't complete yet. If you forcefully break through, it will cause your foundation to be unstable. It's not worth it, Demon Eye said, but I don't have much time left. If I cultivate normally, even if I have a month, I won't be able to open up my Qi Si, Qin Feng said. They would definitely leave before the great conquest of the slaves. There were only 20 days left, and he had only opened his ninth spiritual vein a few days ago. Even if he cultivated without sleep, he wouldn't be able to break through to the sea-opening realm in such a short time. Under normal circumstances, it is indeed impossible, Demon Eye smiled and said, but don't forget, you have an ability that others don't have. Qin Feng was stunned, and then he remembered. How could he have forgotten about this? The 100 Calamity Swallowing Sky technique can devour all energy for your own use. You have to make good use of this ability. Qin Feng blinked, and then slapped his thigh fiercely. He said with annoyance, you shouldn't have killed that bastard Enrun. You should have injured him and let me devour his spiritual power. The spiritual power of a bone-strengthening realm expert. Even if it can't help me break through to the sea-opening realm, it can at least be tempered to perfection in the ninth spiritual vein. Don't think about such a good thing. Demon Eye rolled his eyes and said sternly, it's best to rely on your own strength to cultivate. Don't think about such unrealistic ideas as reaping without sowing. Qin Feng curled his lips and didn't refute. Demon Eye was right. He couldn't pin all his hopes on others. Sometimes he was very curious. Didn't this old thing always want to occupy his body? It also said that the stronger he was, the more benefits it would have in the future. However, This old thing suppressed his rapid growth and taught him to avoid some mistakes on the road of cultivation. If they hadn't signed the devil's contract, he would have had the illusion that it was his teacher. Go prepare the herbs. Body tempering should also be put on the agenda again. Qin Feng nodded. The next day, he went to the Treasure Heaven Pavilion to collect enough herbs to refine the broken blood bone shaping liquid, and then entered the city lord's mansion. There was someone to lead him to the training camp for miners. Standing on top of a pavilion, the corners of Qin Feng's mouth unknowingly curled up as he looked at the group of young men and women who were cultivating with blood and sweat not far away. What? You're not going to take a look? Strictly speaking, you're also one of them. Ouyang, she smiled. That kind of training isn't suitable for me, Qin Feng said without turning his head. Ouyang, she smiled. For someone who could even kill cloudy days, staying in the training camp for miners was indeed a waste of talent. Fine, I'll go take a look. There's a group of acquaintances. Qin Feng smiled as he went downstairs and walked towards the training camp. Big brother Qin Feng, you're here. In the distance, Qin Cancan's face was filled with excitement as she ran over. It's Qin Feng, the genius youth who killed cloudy days. His appearance instantly attracted all the young men and women. After all, he was also a famous person in the city. Brother Qin Feng, you're late. Yelin, Su Yuan, and the others walked over. Qin Feng smiled at them. He also had a good impression of them. Qin Feng won't be training with us now. He's not on the same level as us. Su Yuan joked with a smile. Everyone sighed. Who would have thought that the person of the same generation who competed with them for the spirit pool was now the representative of the younger generation? He was the target that they all looked up to and worked hard for. Looking at the smiling faces that were brimming with youthful vitality, Qin Feng felt the feeling of youth that he hadn't felt for a long time. This was what miners should be like. Although he was still a miner, this was getting further and further away from him. But when he thought of their final outcome, he couldn't feel happy. These people were all seedlings with good potential and would definitely be recruited. Chapter 60. Testing hands after bidding farewell to these people. Qin Feng followed Ouyang Shi around the city lord's mansion and had a basic understanding of the terrain. Finally, the two of them appeared in the mountains behind the city lord's mansion. What are we doing here? Qin Feng didn't understand. Someone will personally train us, but this is a secret and cannot be known to outsiders. As Ouyang Shi spoke, a helpless expression suddenly appeared on her face, and she continued, Moreover, this place is not a good place. Qin Feng looked around and nodded. It does not look like a good place. There was a bamboo forest in front of them, and there were a few thatched huts in the middle of the bamboo forest. It looked like they would be staying there for a while. Moreover, there were no obstructions in the surroundings, and it was completely connected to the forest. It was equivalent to arranging for him to stay with the spirit beasts. However, he didn't care. He was still worried about not having the opportunity to hunt spirit beasts and devour their blood. You don't seem to be worried at all. Looking at Qin Feng, Ouyang, she said, don't underestimate this place. Father caught many rank 2 spirit beasts and raised them here. Qin Feng shrugged his shoulders. He didn't care about the blood of rank 1 spirit beasts. All right, why didn't Xiao Yun, Long Zhan, and Su Qin come? They have accumulated enough in the channel opening realm. Father is thinking of ways to help them break through to the sea opening realm. Ouyang, she said. Oh, Qin Feng nodded. With the city lord's mansion's abundant resources, the 3 of them should be able to smoothly open their sea of qi. At that time, their strength would be even stronger. What do we need to do? Just cultivate as usual. Cultivate normally? Qin Feng was stunned and said, Since it's like this, isn't it the same wherever we cultivate? Why come here? Ouyang, she rolled her eyes at him and said unhappily, Do you think my father has nothing better to do and is looking for trouble? Ouyang, she fiercely knocked Qin Feng's head and walked towards the thatched hut. Qin Feng covered his head as he stared at Ouyang Shi's graceful back that could arouse a person's desire to commit a crime. He gritted his teeth. The daily necessities in the thatched hut were already prepared, enough for them to live for a week. This place bordered the forest, so even during the day, They could hear one or two beast roars from time to time. Here, Ouyangshi handed over a small bottle. What is this? Qin Feng asked. It's a type of spiritual liquid used to refine the body. Bathing in it every day is very beneficial to your body. Qin Feng smiled and took the bottle. He placed it under his nose and sniffed it. A faint fragrance wafted out. It was completely different from the blood-severing bone-molding fluid. I wonder whose effect is better compared to the blood-severing bone-molding fluid, he muttered softly. It's getting late. Rest early. Ouyangshi said and turned to leave. After returning to his room, Qin Feng fetched a bucket of water and poured the spiritual liquid that Ouyangshi gave him into the wooden bucket. Then he took off his clothes and sat inside. Suddenly, Qin Feng felt a huge pressure pressing down on him. It was as if an invisible hand was tightly gripping him. Qin Feng was unable to breathe for a moment. His body was slightly deformed. Qin Feng's throat let out a low roar of extreme pain. This was a kind of intense, squeezing pain. It was completely different from the blood-severing, bone-molding fluid, but the torturous effect was similar. Even though Qin Feng had experienced the torture of the blood-severing, bone-molding fluid, the veins on his face were bulging. In the end, his body began to twist like a fried dough twist. When his bones collided, there was a crisp, crackling sound. What the hell is this? Qin Feng gritted his teeth. He felt that his body was about to be crushed, and the pressure was still increasing. If this continued, his body would explode sooner or later. In the end, Qin Feng had no choice but to use the 100-calamity heaven-swallowing art to devour part of the spiritual liquid. In another room, Ouyangshi was leisurely lying in the bathtub in her pajamas. Hearing the low roar coming from Qin Feng's room, she couldn't help but shake her head and smile. She muttered to herself, "He can't even withstand this little pressure. It seems that the strength of his body still has a lot of room for development." The night passed by in a flash. When a morning sun shone in, Qin Feng slowly opened his eyes. His complexion was somewhat pale. He had spent the majority of the night before he was able to completely absorb the medicinal properties of this spirit liquid. He spent the rest of the time cultivating. It wasn't until dawn that he barely recovered. As he exhaled a mouthful of turbid air, his face gradually returned to normal. This thing is actually stronger than the blood-severing, bone-molding fluid. Qin Feng shook his head with a wry smile. The pain of using this thing for a long time could be imagined. Sighing, Qin Feng got up, washed up, and went outside. He found that Ouyangshi was already eating breakfast in the courtyard. There were a few delicious side dishes on the stone table. There were both meat and vegetables, which immediately aroused Qin Feng's gluttonous bug. "Hurry up and eat. We still have other things to do." Ouyangshi didn't even look at Qin Feng and said indifferently. Qin Feng walked over and asked in surprise, "What else?" "Let's talk after eating." Qin Feng quickly ate a few mouthfuls and followed Ouyangshi to a waterfall. "What are we doing here? Do you see that protruding rock?" Ouyangshi pointed at the rock below the waterfall and said. Qin Feng nodded. "Stand on it and cultivate. If you can last 10 minutes on it, then you have passed the first stage." Qin Feng's eyelids twitched, listening to the rumbling sound of falling into the water, not to mention 10 minutes. It would be good if he could stand on it. This is the first step of physical training. Looking at Qin Feng's expression, Ouyangshi said, "Father said that it is very difficult for your spirit energy to improve. The only way is to strengthen your physical strength." Qin Feng nodded. "The demon I also said the same thing. Your father also knows how to train his physical body? Why, do you want to try?" Ouyangshi glanced at him. "I couldn't ask for more." Qin Feng smiled faintly. In the same level, no one can compete with him in terms of physical strength. He really wants to know how strong his physical strength has become. Ouyangshi is so familiar with physical training, and with the spirit liquid tempering her body for a long time, her physical strength should be very high. She is a good opponent. In that case, I will let you see what true physical strength is. Ouyangshi hooked her finger at Qin Feng. Qin Feng smiled. In the next moment, he rushed towards Ouyangshi, circulated his physical strength, and punched out. Bang! At the instant of collision, Qin Feng's countenance abruptly changed. A huge rebound force transmitted over, causing his body to tremble violently. Qin Feng was forced to retreat. On the other hand, Ouyangshi did not move at all. What a strong force. Qin Feng was secretly shocked. He knew that Ouyangshi was very strong, but he did not expect her physical strength to be even stronger. When his fist landed on her palm, it was like hitting a piece of iron, causing his entire arm to go numb. How about it? Do you still want to try? A playful smile flashed across Ouyangxi's face. Of course. Chapter 61. Chapter 61 To increase the quantity secretly. Under the waterfall, the rumbling sound of waves resounded incessantly, causing the air in this area to become much more moist. By the side, Qin Feng looked at Ouyangshi seriously before quickly rushing over, clenching his fists as he punched Ouyangshi. Ouyangshi still sent out a palm strike, but just as they were about to collide, Qin Feng suddenly retracted his strength and extended his leg to sweep towards Ouyangxi's lower body. Bang! Ouyangshi didn't dodge at all, and their calves collided together. Qin Feng's body trembled, and his fist that had retracted its strength once again erupted with ferocious power. His fist turned into a claw and quickly grabbed Ouyangxi's wrist. At the same time, his calf also wanted to lift up, causing Ouyangxi's lower body to be unstable, and she was thrown up by Qin Feng. Get out! After spinning one round, Qin Feng threw Ouyangshi out, and at the same time, he sped up and rushed over. While she was in midair, Qin Feng quickly attacked again. Ouyangshi did not panic. Her slender waist suddenly twisted, her body somersaulting in midair, avoiding Qin Feng's fist. At the same time, he bent his body at an incredible angle and gave Qin Feng a whipping kick, which made him grimace in pain. Qin Feng was sent flying. His back was burning with pain. Ouyangshi smiled at him and said, "Do you still want to try?" Qin Feng waved his hand. The fight just now made him understand that he was no match for Ouyangshi in terms of physical strength or close combat skills. If he continued fighting, he would only be humiliating himself. Why is your fleshly body so strong? Qin Feng asked. Do you think the city lord's mansion's resources are just for show? Ouyangshi smiled and shook her head. Ever since I started cultivating, I've been in contact with physical training. After so many years of accumulation, do you think it's all for fun? All right, enough nonsense. Hurry up and do as I say. Qin Feng nodded. He was just an unorthodox cultivator and had only cultivated for a short time. It was only natural that he was inferior to her. Qin Feng no longer hesitated and quickly rushed up the rock. Bang! However, before he could stabilize himself, the powerful impact directly blasted him into the pool below. Qin Feng popped his head out and jumped onto the rock again. The same thing happened again. F***, I'm going to kill you. Qin Feng's stubbornness was also stimulated. He kept jumping up and down the rocks, but he was also constantly being pounded down. Seeing this, Ouyangshi nodded and walked to the side to start her own training. Boom! In this way, Qin Feng was washed down by the water again, and he climbed up again and again. His firm eyes were not moved at all. It's my first time participating in this kind of training. I stood on that rock of yours. Unfortunately, it took me an entire week to barely stand on it. Ouyangshi glanced at Qin Feng and smiled. A week, Qin Feng murmured. To him, it had been too long. Glancing at her, Qin Feng's eyes suddenly focused. Ouyangshi was standing on a huge tree stick inserted into the rock. There was almost no obstruction from the waterfall, and it directly fell down. Turning his head to look at his side, Qin Feng gritted his teeth. There were many protruding rocks above him to slow down the impact of the water. In comparison, the impact on his side was obviously much smaller. However, Ouyangshi stood steadily under the impact of the waterfall, and he found it difficult to even stand up. The gap between the two was obvious. I can't fall too far behind. Qin Feng jumped onto the rock. Just as his spirit energy was about to stick to his feet, it was washed down again. Although my strength and physical strength were not as good as yours at that time, it was still a strange training method for you. Without 3 to 5 days, it will be difficult for you to stand on the rock. Ouyang, she smiled faintly. Qin Feng's mouth twitched. He didn't want to argue with her on this issue. He looked up at the waterfall that seemed to fall from the sky, and his eyes flickered. The water flow is too fast. There is no time for me to gather my spirit energy. Suddenly, Qin Feng's eyes lit up. He almost forgot something. With a smile on his face, Qin Feng channeled the power of water. A water column rose into the sky and quickly circled above his head, forming a water vortex. At the same time, a water column transported him into the air. Qin Feng took a deep breath and rushed into the waterfall. The water vortex rotated quickly, resisting part of the impact of the water flow. Taking advantage of this gap, Qin Feng gathered his spirit energy, adhered to the soles of his feet, and clung to the rock. Rumble. When he landed, the water vortex was also washed away by the powerful water flow. In an instant, a powerful impact fell on Qin Feng's body. Qin Feng's body staggered violently. After holding on for more than 10 seconds, he was washed down again. Seeing this, Ouyang, she raised her eyebrows slightly, but did not say anything. It really works. Qin Feng was overjoyed. Of course, the power of water could only be maximized when there was enough water. Just like this, Qin Feng used the water god technique and rushed up the rock again and again. After holding on for a while, he was washed down again. After about 10 times, Qin Feng's body was already very tired. After holding on for about half a minute, Qin Feng's vision turned black and he fell down. This time, it took a long time for him to surface. Seeing this, Ouyang, she said, "It's about time. I could still hold on." Qin Feng said stubbornly. He could not accept that he only held on for 30 seconds in the morning. "You're already doing well. This kind of cultivation is too difficult. Ordinary people would need at least 10 days to half a month to do what you did." Knowing what Qin Feng was thinking, Ouyang, she rolled her eyes. She spent half a month to hold on for 30 seconds. "I have already increased your training to the maximum according to your physical fitness. If you continue, even if your will is firm, your body will not be able to hold on." At the end of her words, Ouyang Shi's tone was unquestionable. Hearing this, Qin Feng nodded and no longer persisted. He climbed ashore to rest. After a full hour, he felt that his strength had recovered quite a bit. "What do we do in the afternoon?" Lying on the ground, Qin Feng asked. "Enter the mountains and hunt for rank 2 spirit beasts." Qin Feng was energized. He could finally use the 100 Calamity Devouring Heaven technique. But what surprised him was that Ouyang, she only allowed one person to kill one, and the reason she gave him was still based on his strength and reasonable training volume. There was no other way. After devouring the blood energy of an early rank 2 spirit beast, Qin Feng could only return to the thatched cottage with her. In the middle of the night, Qin Feng finally finished refining the spirit liquid. Although he was very tired, he still got up and sneaked under the waterfall. Ouyang, she might be used to this kind of training, but he was not used to it. If he wanted to surpass others, he had to put in more effort than others. With the same amount of training, how could he catch up with Ouyang Shi? A water whirlpool formed above his head, and a python-like water column shot out from the pool, carrying him to the rock. When dawn broke, Qin Feng was already exhausted. He carefully returned to his room and entered a state of cultivation to recover the energy he had expended. About an hour later, there was a burst of fragrance coming from the kitchen. Qin Feng stretched and got up. After breakfast, the two continued the previous day's training. "Not bad. You actually lasted for more than 10 seconds. Is your progress amazing?" Ouyang, she was slightly stunned that he lasted for more than 40 seconds. Qin Feng smiled and did not say anything. After cultivating in the middle of the night, he was not without any results. In this way, Qin Feng obediently accepted Ouyang, she's training volume during the day, and ran out alone at night to continue training. Chapter 62. Killing the water spirit python. A week passed by quickly, and Qin Feng could already persist on the rock for 3 minutes. Even Ouyangshi felt that this kind of progress was inconceivable. Your progress is too terrifying. Ouyangshi looked at Qin Feng in astonishment and said, "At that time, it took me more than 2 months to reach your level. The starting point of our initial cultivation is different." Qin Feng smiled and said perfunctorily. Ouyangshi looked at him and felt that something was wrong, but she couldn't tell what was wrong. The sun was setting in the west. When Qin Feng swallowed the second early-stage, second-rank spirit beast, the spiritual power in his body was already almost full. This was Ouyangshi increasing the number of spirit beasts hunted according to his results, but Qin Feng was still not satisfied. It seemed that I have to take some time to hunt spirit beasts. A week had passed, and according to the rules, Qin Feng could go home today. "All right, go back to the Treasure Heaven Pavilion and help me prepare these herbs." Qin Feng listed the herbs needed to refine the sea-opening pill and handed it to Ouyangshi. "What do you need so many herbs for?" Ouyangshi asked. "To help my sister heal," Qin Feng said. Hearing this, Ouyangshi didn't ask anymore and secretly sighed. How could a person with broken meridians be healed? Qin Feng actually wanted her to prepare the herbs for the broken bloodbone shaping liquid, but after thinking about it, he decided not to. The effect of the broken bloodbone shaping liquid was similar to the spirit liquid provided by Ouyangshi, so he didn't need to waste a portion. When Qin Feng returned to the clansmen immediately gathered around and asked him about his cultivation these days. "Big brother Qin Feng's cultivation is definitely different from ours." Qin Can squeezed into the crowd and said. Qin Feng pinched her red cheeks and smiled. After dinner, he chatted with Qin Yao for a while, then went to Qin Yao's place to sit for a while before getting up and returning to his room. He didn't have much time to stay at home, and with training, it was even less. This was the only time he could make use of. Everyone in the Qin family knew what Qin Feng was doing, so they understood and supported him. Late at night, Qin Feng sneaked out of the family and came to the back of the mountain in search of powerful spirit beasts. He needed to open up his Qi Sea in the near future, so he needed to devour a large amount of spirit beast blood and Qi to accumulate his own cultivation. After searching the back of the mountain for more than an hour, Qin Feng did not find a single rank 2 spirit beast. After devouring the blood and Qi of more than 10 rank 1 spirit beasts, Qin Feng felt bored. The more powerful he was, the more energy he could devour. A mere rank 1 spirit beast could no longer satisfy him. Second-rank spirit beasts rarely appear in this area, unless we go to a place further away, but we don't have enough time. Qin Feng sighed. Just as he was about to leave, Mo Yan's voice rang out in his mind. "Don't worry, 2 li to the east." Qin Feng's heart moved, and he quickly ran over. There was a river that was more than 10 meters wide, and in the shallow water area, there was a single-horned crocodile. Looking at its size, it should be close to maturity. Early rank 2 spirit beast. Qin Feng was happy. After searching for half the night, he finally found a rank 2 spirit beast. He bent down and slowly moved over. It was not easy to find one, so he didn't want to scare it. Gradually approaching the single-horned crocodile, Qin Feng narrowed his eyes. His body was still for a moment, and then suddenly burst out. His arms stretched out, and a spirit hand grabbed the tail of the single-horned crocodile. Splash! At the same time, the water surface violently rippled, and a giant python as thick as a bucket quickly wrapped around the single-horned crocodile's body. 1 person and 1 python almost made a move at the same time, so much so that they were both stunned. In the water, the snake raised its head, and there was a human-like astonishment in its eyes. Qin Feng grinned. This single-horned crocodile was really sad. Not only did he want it, but even a giant python also wanted it. He quickly came back to his senses and dragged the single-horned crocodile to the shore. Perceiving Qin Feng's movements, the giant python tightly wrapped around the single-horned crocodile and pulled it to the deep water area. 1 person and 1 python confronted each other, and after a stalemate for a while, Qin Feng gradually couldn't bear it. In this kind of competition of strength, he was obviously at a disadvantage. In this pulling and dragging, The single-horned crocodile's body was seriously deformed. Seeing this, Qin Feng quickly operated the 100 Calamity, swallowing sky art, and began to devour the blood on the crocodile's body. Because the giant python's body was deeply entangled in the single-horned crocodile's flesh, part of the devouring power also affected the giant python's body. This made Qin Feng happy, and he accelerated the devouring. Suddenly, Qin Feng felt relieved. He looked back and saw that the giant python had released the single-horned crocodile and sunk into the water. "You ran fast," Qin Feng secretly cursed. Just as he was about to drag the single-horned crocodile to the shore, his eyes flashed. He stopped at the waist of the river and devoured the single-horned crocodile's blood. After refining the single-horned crocodile's blood, Qin Feng comfortably stretched and walked to the shore. Splash! Suddenly, a huge black shadow rushed out of the water. It was less than 5 meters away from Qin Feng. In the blink of an eye, it came over, bringing with it a large whistling sound. Good timing. Qin Feng shouted and stretched out his hands. The giant spiritual hand stretched out and grabbed the giant python's tail. Then, he fiercely threw it to the shore. "I've been waiting for you for a long time." Qin Feng walked to the shore and stared at the giant python with green eyes. From the beginning, he knew that the giant python didn't really leave, so he deliberately stayed in the water to give it a chance to sneak attack. Hiding in front of a spiritual master and launching a sneak attack was tantamount to courting death. Not to mention that they were in the water. As long as he used the water god technique, everything in the water would be under his control. Trying to sneak attack in front of him was even more courting death. Qin Feng slowly walked over, and the smile on his face deepened. This was a peak early second-rank spiritual beast, the water spirit python. It was much stronger than the spiritual beasts he had encountered before. The water spirit python propped up its huge snake head from the gravel. Its inverted triangular eyes flashed with a dangerous light. It opened its huge mouth and shot out a water arrow. Qin Feng was expressionless and didn't dodge. When the water arrow was less than 10 centimeters away from his forehead, it suddenly shattered. "Using this kind of attack in front of me," Qin Feng sneered. Any kind of energy attack, as long as the main component was water, he could use the water god technique to dissolve it. This was the terrifying part of this technique. Once he mastered it, he could control all the water in the world. Qin Feng waved his arm, and many spiritual spears shot out. In front of him, a spiritual light circle shot out quickly and hit the water spirit python. The water spirit python's agile body slowed down instantly. It was pierced by the spears and nailed to the ground. Blood dyed the ground red. To humans, spiritual power was dangerous and unpredictable. But to spiritual beasts, it was fatal because spiritual beasts were born with weak spiritual power, especially spiritual beasts that didn't have spiritual intelligence. When they encountered a spiritual master who was not much stronger than them, they couldn't resist at all. This was also the reason why Qin Feng didn't fear the water spirit python at all when he sensed its strength. If it was a human cultivator with the same strength, he would have to spend a lot of effort. Chapter 63. Chapter 63, to have one's fill the next day. Qin Feng came to the thatched hut and continued his training. Perhaps it was because he had devoured 2 more rank 2 spirit beasts that his strength had increased, or perhaps it was because of his recent training that he could persist on the rock for a longer period of time. It's only been 1 night, but there's an extra 30 seconds. Ouyangxi looked at Qin Feng as if she was looking at a monster. Even she was shocked by such an abnormal speed of improvement. Late at night, Qin Feng did the same as always. After finishing his tempering, he went to the waterfall. "No wonder you improved so quickly." Someone appeared behind him. Qin Feng didn't even turn his head as he said softly, "I thought you would come out after I finished." "You knew that I was following you?" Ouyangxi asked in shock. Qin Feng smiled and said, "Do you think you can hide it in front of a spirit master?" Ouyangxi was relieved. She had almost forgotten that Qin Feng was only a beginner-level spirit master. "You've already done a lot of training during the day, yet you're still working so hard at night." Aren't you afraid that your body will be ruined? Ouyangxi frowned. Hearing this, Qin Feng shook his head and said, "Why do you think I rose so quickly in such a short period of time?" Ouyangxi was stunned and looked at him in confusion. Everyone has different experiences and encounters. What they have to endure is also different. What I'm talking about is not only psychological, but also physical. Qin Feng looked at the waterfall quietly and said indifferently, "Maybe you've adapted to this kind of training rhythm, so you think this is the best training volume. But to me, the training during the day is far from enough. I'm training behind you not because I want to become stronger, but because I want to surpass you. But to surpass you, I have to put in twice, thrice, or even more training than you. With the same amount of training, how can I surpass you? Or do you subconsciously think that I can't surpass you?" Qin Feng's calm words caused Ouyangxi to be deeply shocked. Looking at that skinny back, she found it hard to imagine that such a powerful strength and temperament was hidden in that body that had not yet fully developed. "Your ambition is very big," Ouyangxi said. For a moment, she didn't know how to describe Qin Feng. "Perhaps, because I want more." Qin Feng smiled faintly. "The reason why I set up so much training volume was because I was worried that your body wouldn't be able to take it. After all, I'm someone who walks step by step. But now, it seems that I've underestimated you." Ouyangxi shook her head and said helplessly, "From now on, you can decide how you want to arrange your training." Qin Feng smiled and nodded. Suddenly, he asked, "You've long noticed that there's something wrong with my cultivation speed. Why did you only notice it today?" Ouyangxi rolled her eyes, walked up, and hit Qin Feng on the back of his head. She said angrily, "Is there anyone who mocks people like you?" Qin Feng looked surprised. "What did I laugh at you? With such a heavy training load during the day, who wouldn't fall asleep as soon as they went back? Who would have the energy to care about you?" Ouyangxi glanced at Qin Feng and said, "If it wasn't for my curiosity, I wouldn't have noticed it." Qin Feng shook his head and didn't say anything. He directly rushed up the rock. "You can actually go up directly," Ouyangxi said in surprise. She remembered that Qin Feng had to use the power in the water to stand on the rock before the water rushed down. How could he directly go up now? Qin Feng smiled at her and didn't say anything. Ouyangxi seemed to have sensed something. She stared at Qin Feng and calculated the time in her heart. Finally, when Qin Feng's endurance reached its limit, he suddenly rushed into the water. Ouyangxi was so shocked that her mouth opened wide. She pointed at Qin Feng in disbelief and said, "You can actually last for 8 minutes. I guess that you might have hidden the time during the day. I didn't expect you to hide it so much. It's more than double." Hee hee. Qin Feng smiled and said, "You said that if I can last for 10 minutes, I will be qualified to stand on your side and train. According to the current progress, it will only take 1 or 2 days. I was thinking of how to trick you, but it seems that there's no need for that now." Ouyangxi's heart was in turmoil. In just 8 or 9 days, he went from being unable to stand to lasting for 8 minutes. She, who had experienced this step before, knew how difficult it was. Back then, she used half a year to complete this step. Although Qin Feng's starting height was much higher than hers, the difference between 8 or 9 days and 8 or 9 months was too obvious. Who's afraid of who? After being provoked by Qin Feng, her unwillingness to admit defeat was ignited. She jumped up and rushed up the tree. Qin Feng was stunned. He immediately shook his head and smiled. He jumped up the rock and continued to train. Not long after, Ouyangxi screamed and fell from the tree branch. "You have already adapted to that kind of training. Your body can't take it if you increase it too much," Qin Feng said. "It's none of your business." Ouyangxi rolled her eyes at Qin Feng. She gritted her teeth and rushed up again. However, the time she lasted was even shorter. She didn't even last half of the time during the day before she was washed down again. "I can't. I'm too tired." After a few times, Ouyangxi was so tired that she was panting. She laid on the ground with her arms and legs spread out. She didn't look like a goddess at all. "Hey, you didn't train until dawn, did you?" Ouyangxi asked as she looked at Qin Feng, who was still persevering and didn't seem tired at all. "It's not that exaggerated. I just went back an hour before you woke up." "Then you continue." I'm going back to sleep. Oyangshi's mouth twitched. She kicked Qin Feng with her leg. In the morning, when Oyangshi finished making breakfast, Qin Feng just happened to come back. You didn't sleep for the whole night. You could still train during the day? Oyangshi was stunned when she saw Qin Feng's expression. I haven't slept for 8 days. Oyangshi's face twitched. She immediately said seriously, Qin Feng, I know you want to quickly improve your strength, but you have to know how to relax. For a cultivator of your level, not sleeping for a few days won't affect you much, but you have to know your limits. Qin Feng nodded. He naturally understood this principle. He had been cultivating for a few hours to recover his strength for 7 or 8 days. His body was fine, but the mental exhaustion couldn't be eliminated. I was just about to talk to you about this. After eating a few mouthfuls of rice, Qin Feng rubbed his hands and said with a smile, Since I'm arranging my own training volume, there's no need to rush at night. Can you give me an extra bottle of spirit liquid every day? What are you trying to do? Oyangshi stared at him. 1 bottle isn't enough. In the past, I had to squeeze out time to train, so I didn't care. But now I don't need it. 1 bottle will be used up in 2 hours. I'm not full. Not full. Chapter 64. Big trouble without Oyangshi's restraint. Qin Feng's training was no longer restricted. He trained non-stop for the entire morning, increasing his time to 9 minutes and 10 seconds. This kind of improvement made Oyangshi frightened. The longer the time, the harder it was to increase the time. However, Qin Feng didn't seem to have any effect. After eating lunch and resting for a while, the two entered the mountain together to hunt spirit beasts. Oyangshi no longer restricted the number of spirit beasts he could hunt. Qin Feng was like a wild horse, sweeping through the area like a storm, causing Oyangshi's eyelids to twitch. In the quiet mountain forest, the roars of beasts suddenly rang out. Along with the sound of pings, rows of trees fell. In midair, spiritual spears floated in the air. Then, like arrows leaving the bowstring, they shot out in all directions. Swish, 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 swish. The dust on the ground also filled the sky. When the dust dissipated, the blood of the 2 early second-rank spirit beasts had already dyed the ground red. Just as they were on the verge of death, Qin Feng walked up to them and devoured their blood. I have to find a way to increase the power of the 100 Calamity Heaven Devouring Art. Qin Feng frowned slightly. Right now, he could only devour people's spiritual energy or spiritual beast blood chi when they were alive. Once they died, he couldn't devour them. This was quite troublesome for Qin Feng because he couldn't be separated from Oyangshi every time. When she was around, Qin Feng didn't dare to use his devouring ability. After all, it was a bit strange. If he couldn't devour spirit beast blood because of this, it would be a huge loss. Using his spiritual energy, Qin Feng sensed Oyangshi coming over. He quickly controlled the bloodthirsty ants and threw them on the corpses of the 2 spirit beasts. Soon, only the bones of the spirit beasts were left. This is the 8th spirit beast you killed today. No, it's the 9th. Oyangshi stared at Qin Feng with an indescribable surprise. No matter how powerful a person was, their energy was limited. However, Qin Feng seemed to have endless energy. One had to know that he was only in the channel opening realm, and his spiritual energy had reached the sea opening realm. The spirit beasts he killed were all comparable to the sea opening realm. This was equivalent to fighting 9 people with the same strength as him. Who could endure it? At least she couldn't. So she only killed 2 spirit beasts of the same strength every day. Knowing what Oyangshi meant, Qin Feng shook his head and faintly smiled. If you imagine that this isn't a training but something that really happened, and you're in a desperate situation where failure means death, you can do it too. The reason why you can't do it is because you always leave a way out for yourself, hinting to yourself that this is just a training, a mission, and there is no danger to your life. Under this subconscious effect, your potential is also imprisoned. If you don't know where your limit is, you will never try to break it. This way, you will never surpass your limit. Oyangshi was startled. This was the first time she heard someone explain training to her like this. But thinking about it carefully, it was indeed so. She had always been limited by the mission her father gave her. She only wanted to complete it and never considered what Qin Feng said. Maybe I should change my way of thinking. As night fell, Qin Feng used 2 hours to consume a bottle of spirit liquid. He reckoned that Ouyangshi should be sleeping soundly by now. So he took out the herbs that Ouyangshi had prepared and refined a sea-opening pill for the demon eye. There's still time. Let's do it again. Seeing the demon eye refining the sea-opening pill, Qin Feng took out the second bottle of spirit liquid and dripped it into the wooden barrel to continue refining his body. 2 hours later, the second bottle of spirit liquid was used up and the sea-opening pill was refined. Qin Feng breathed a sigh of relief. He changed into a clean set of clothes and laid on the bed. The fatigue from the past few days made him fall asleep quickly. As night fell, everything fell asleep. The whole world seemed to have quieted down. The whole mountain was quiet. Without the sunlight, the forest seemed even colder and darker. The silver moon, hanging high in the sky, brought a trace of silver to the forest. The lush branches stretched out, and under the bright moonlight, they looked like ferocious beasts baring their fangs and brandishing their claws. At some point, dust suddenly rose and the ground trembled slightly. However, it was extremely subtle and difficult to detect. The bright moonlight poured down, leaving white areas on the ground. Under the moonlight, a black shadow streaked across the forest, followed by a third Qin Feng, who was sleeping soundly, suddenly woke up. In the pitch-black room, a pair of cold eyes lit up. He scanned the surroundings, but didn't discover anything. What's going on? Was it an illusion? Qin Feng frowned. Just a moment ago, his heart suddenly palpitated as if something bad was about to happen. His mental power quickly spread out and enveloped the entire thatched hut. Finally, it spread out in all directions. A moment later, Qin Feng's pupils shrank, and he felt a numbing sensation on his head. Without thinking, Qin Feng quickly and carefully entered Ouyangxi's room. As soon as he entered, a cold wind blew. Qin Feng rolled on the ground and whispered, "It's me. You felt it too?" Ouyangxi stopped attacking and asked, "I didn't feel it, I just detected it." Qin Feng swallowed his saliva and whispered, "There are at least 30 early-stage, second-order spirit beasts surrounding this place. I also sensed at least 7 or 8 mid-stage, second-order spirit beasts." "What?" Ouyangxi exclaimed. 7 or 8 mid-stage, second-order spirit beasts were equivalent to 7 or 8 mid-stage, opening realm cultivators. She could only deal with 2 at the same time. 3 was already the limit. Why are there so many spirit beasts gathered here? It should be our killing these days that angered them. Moreover, Qin Feng said, and looked at Ouyangxi in silence. Moreover what? Looking at Qin Feng's face, Ouyangxi guessed that it was more than that. I also sensed 1 or 2 faintly discernible waves of terrifying pressure, but they were intermittent and then disappeared. Staring at Ouyangxi, Qin Feng frowned and said, "But connecting the current situation, I'm sure that the terrifying pressure really exists. If I'm not wrong, there should be 1 or 2 late-stage, second-order spirit beasts." "Impossible." Ouyangxi's eyes suddenly widened. She shook her head and said, "This area has been swept by my father, and he deliberately caught a lot of second-order spirit beasts that are the natural enemies of the native spirit beasts. How can they unite? It's impossible for there to be any late-stage, second-order spirit beasts. I'm only at the mid-stage, opening realm now. My father can't leave any late-stage, second-order spirit beasts that are comparable to late-stage, opening realm in this area. But the truth is the truth. Whether you believe it or not, there are late-stage, second-order spirit beasts here." Qin Feng shook his head gently and said, "Only spirit beasts of this level can unite so many spirit beasts. Now we are in big trouble. The first thing to do is not to prove whether this situation is possible, but how to break out of here." Chapter 65. Breakthrough. Ouyangxi's face turned pale, and her body couldn't help but tremble. No matter how strong she was still a woman. Under such circumstances, even she was a little flustered. Oh no, the encirclement is gradually closing in. Qin Feng's face changed slightly. His spiritual power sensed that this area was already surrounded. Just the number of spirit beasts that he could sense had reached more than 50, and almost all of them were second-rank spirit beasts. Hearing this, Ouyang-Shi's body went soft. She supported herself on the table to prevent herself from falling. Qin Feng's eyes flashed and analyzed. The strength in the west is relatively weak. If we launch a surprise attack, we should have a 50 to 60% chance of success. But that direction makes me nervous. There might be a second-rank late-stage spirit beast guarding it. This is very likely premeditated. A powerful spirit beast has gained intelligence and is leading all of this. That's why it purposely left an exit to lure us in. Hearing Qin Feng's words, Ouyang-Shi's legs went soft and she sat on the ground. Her face was pale and her lips trembled. Quick, ask for reinforcements and reveal the situation here. Seeing her like this, Qin Feng frowned. It was difficult to go out now. How could they ask for reinforcements? He squatted down and pressed her shoulders, saying seriously, Ouyang-Shi, you're the strongest, so you must stay calm and not lose your confidence. Otherwise, we won't have any hope. But do we still have hope? Even if there are no second-rank late-stage spirit beasts, we won't be able to break out. Ouyang-Shi said blankly, as long as we're alive, we can't give up hope. Qin Feng stared at her with burning eyes and said sternly, remember, as long as we're alive, there's a glimmer of hope. As long as we grasp this glimmer of hope, we might be able to survive. She opened her eyes wide and stared blankly at Qin Feng. In that pair of dark eyes, Ouyang-Shi didn't see panic or despair, but a strong determination and desire to live. After a long time, she nodded and said, what do you need me to do? Ouyang-Shi regained her fighting spirit, making Qin Feng nod his head. After a while, he said, this group of spirit beasts is premeditated. They won't attack randomly. Although this puts us in great danger, it also gives us hope. Right now, we can't be optimistic and think that it's impossible for there to be a late-stage, second-rank spirit beast. Instead, we have to make a worst-case scenario. If there really is a spirit beast of that level here, our first priority is to consider whether we have the strength to deal with a spirit beast of that level. No, indeed, we didn't. Qin Feng nodded, then continued. But you've been stuck at the middle stage of the sea-opening realm for some time now. If you can break through to the late stage, the threat of a late second-grade spirit beast will be much smaller. Breakthrough? Ouyang-Shi's eyes lit up, but then she said helplessly, although I feel that a breakthrough is imminent, but the current situation, now is the best time to make a breakthrough. Qin Feng interrupted him and said, the more critical the situation is, the more your potential can be stimulated. You have to believe in yourself. You can definitely break through. Under Qin Feng's gaze, Ouyang-Shi nodded. Okay, you focus on breaking through now. Before that, I won't let any spirit beast disturb you. With that, Qin Feng stood up and walked out. Wait, Ouyang-Shi said, it will take a lot of time to break through to the late stage. I'm worried. Don't worry. And don't tell me how long it will take. Qin Feng waved his hand, turned his head, and shrugged with a smile. I believe that before I fall, I will definitely see you appear. Looking at Qin Feng's smile, it was a faint smile that started from the corner of his eyes and gradually spread to his whole face. It was full of sincerity and infectious power. For a moment, Ouyang-Shi was a little dizzy. When she woke up, Qin Feng had already left the room. Don't worry. I will definitely succeed. You must wait for me. Murmuring while looking outside, Ouyang-Shi slowly closed her eyes, and a fierce spiritual power flowed in her body. After leaving the room and taking a breath of cold air, Qin Feng's slightly feverish head sobered up a lot. Old Mo, can you make a move? After a long time, the voice of the demon, I came out with a trace of weakness. My strength hasn't recovered from the last time. Don't count on me. Hearing this, Qin Feng sighed. He looked faintly into the distance, and his spiritual power continued to spread. I'm afraid I can't make it in time, but even so, I can only do this. He opened his mouth and swallowed the newly refined sea-opening pill. His spiritual power only reached the sea-opening realm, but facing so many rank 2 spirit beasts, his spiritual power alone couldn't deal with them. He could only force a breakthrough. However, in the perception of his spiritual power, the spirit beasts were gradually approaching. He was afraid that he couldn't focus on breaking through. Looking back at Ouyang Shi's room, Qin Feng narrowed his eyes for a while and said in his heart, "You must succeed, or we are all finished." As the sea-opening pill entered his mouth, an unusually large amount of spiritual power poured into his spirit veins, attacking the convergence of the 9 spirit veins, wanting to open up his Qi Si. At the same time, his spiritual power quickly retracted and shrouded the entire thatched cottage. The spirit beast army had already begun to attack, so it was meaningless to use spiritual power to investigate. Qin Feng stared at the closed door and mobilized his spiritual power. A spiritual spear floated in front of him, causing the air to ripple. This was the most dangerous battle he had ever encountered in his life. The strength of the enemy was no longer something he could contend with. The only thing he could do was to stall for time for Ouyang Shi. As long as she could successfully break through, the threat of the late rank 2 spirit beasts would be reduced. Only then would they have a chance of survival. Bang! The door was shattered by a powerful force, and several figures squeezed in. The roar of the beasts was deafening. Pucci! Pucci! The spiritual spears shot out one after another, piercing the glabella of several spirit beasts, killing them instantly. Under the crisis of death, Qin Feng's control of his spiritual power reached an astonishing level. Almost every time he attacked, a spirit beast would die. Roar! The beasts roared again and again, constantly rushing in. Qin Feng stood in the courtyard, motionless. His spiritual power crazily spread out, turning into all kinds of sharp weapons, surging in this narrow area. Boom! A leopard spirit beast rushed over, its sharp claws shining with a cold luster, grabbing at Qin Feng's head. Qin Feng's spiritual power moved, and a spiritual spear shot out from the side, directly piercing the leopard spirit beast's head. Rumble! A large group of spirit beasts attacked, and a terrifying spiritual power spread out. Even from a distance, Qin Feng was trembling. After all, there were more than 10 early rank 2 spirit beasts. It was equivalent to more than 10 early stage sea-opening realm experts attacking together. At this time, his breakthrough had reached the most critical moment. The embryonic form of his Qi Si had already appeared, and it was the most taboo to be disturbed. Roar! A low roar came from Qin Feng's throat. At this moment, his spiritual power swept out from his mind, turning into spiritual ripples, crazily spreading out. The movements of all the spirit beasts slowed down, and when the spiritual ripples passed, they recovered and pounced at Qin Feng one by one. At the same time, Qin Feng's body was slightly silent. After a moment, an even more fierce spiritual power spread out from his body, directly shaking the surrounding spirit beasts. Finally succeeded. Feeling the surging power in his body, Qin Feng's face gradually revealed a cruel smile. Chapter 66. Killing Spirit Beasts. At the critical moment, Qin Feng finally succeeded in his breakthrough, reaching the sea-opening realm. The spiritual energy in his body suddenly increased by several times. The moment it was released, it directly sent several early-stage rank 2 spirit beasts flying. At the same time, Qin Feng used the 100 Calamity, swallowing heaven art. Around him, the space violently rippled. Vaguely, there seemed to be beams of light intertwining with each other, like some kind of mark, releasing a shallow, devouring power. The mark slowly expanded, finally enveloping the entire courtyard. As the devouring power was released, the blood chi of the spirit beasts that were not killed was slowly drawn out. Visible to the naked eye, blood chi shot out from the spirit beast bodies like bloody chains, constantly entering Qin Feng's body. Under the stimulation of life and death, Qin Feng's 100 calamity, swallowing heaven art, had improved a little. Even without touching the creatures, he could still devour their blood qi, but the speed was much slower. However, devouring the blood qi of more than 10 spirit beasts at once was enough to make up for the weakness caused by the force breakthrough. Roar! Suddenly, a deafening tiger roar resounded. A saber-toothed tiger with a body length of more than 5 meters rushed over, opening its bloody mouth. The tiger's roar turned into ripples that spread out, shattering all the stone tables and chairs on the ground. Qin Feng's body shook, and he staggered back. The devouring process had been interrupted. His eyes were slightly dignified. This was a rank 2 spirit beast, the saber-toothed tiger. Judging from its aura, it had even reached the peak of the rank 2 spirit beast. With the strength of a spirit beast body, even a late-sea opening realm expert would have to be careful when dealing with it. Qin Feng narrowed his eyes, his face expressionless. However, his spiritual energy quietly approached the saber-toothed tiger. Soon after, his eyes suddenly widened, and his spiritual energy quickly rushed toward the saber-toothed tiger's head. At the same time, Qin Feng burst out, his body close to the ground like a black arrow. Spiritual energy condensed in his palm. Roar! Being attacked, the saber-toothed tiger showed a painful expression, and its body slowed down. Qin Feng clenched his 5 fingers into a fist, mixed with a shocking qi wave, and bombarded the saber-toothed tiger's head, wanting to kill it in one blow. Whoosh! But at this moment, Qin Feng suddenly felt goosebumps all over his body. Without thinking, he turned around and punched out, hitting the sharp claw that was coming down from the sky. Bang! Qin Feng took a few steps back. Before he could see what kind of spirit beast attacked him, a tiger roar woke him up. It turned out that he had already retreated to the side of the saber-toothed tiger. The saber-toothed tiger struck out with its claw. Qin Feng's spiritual power surged and condensed into a spiritual shield above him. With a loud bang, the spiritual shield shattered. However, using this gap, Qin Feng rolled on the ground and avoided the saber-toothed tiger's claws. However, he didn't even have time to catch his breath. The ground shook violently, and a crack suddenly appeared. Qin Feng's pupil shrank. He saw a huge spirit beast in the crack. Bang! Behind Qin Feng, a huge tail drilled out from the ground and heavily whipped him away. Swoosh! Swoosh! While Xiao Chun was still in the air, black feathers shot down, creating sharp explosions in the air. Qin Feng's expression suddenly changed. He operated his mental strength to the extreme and stopped his body with a whoosh. Those feathers almost brushed past his body and shot over. Roar! The saber-toothed tiger attacked and roared. The sound waves turned into ripples and attacked Qin Feng. Swoosh! Qin Feng waved his hand, and the power of water in the world quickly attacked. It was like a long blue whip. At the top, it turned into a hand and grabbed the tail that emerged from the ground. Then it swung past the saber-toothed tiger like a swing, avoiding the sound wave attack. The water whip quickly shortened and pulled Qin Feng to the tail. He grabbed the tail and pulled out a spirit beast that was close to 10 meters long. This was a rank 2 spirit beast, the pangolin. Qin Feng grabbed the pangolin's tail and circulated his physical strength to the extreme. He swung the pangolin like a weapon. Boom! The saber-toothed tiger was sent flying. After one round, there were no spirit beasts that could still stand in the courtyard. Qin Feng continued to swing. Using the inertia, he threw the pangolin out. At the same time, his spiritual power vibrated. The vulture in the air paused for a moment and was hit by the pangolin. Both of them fell from the sky. His spiritual power condensed into a spear and turned into a sharp light. It pierced through the vulture and the pangolin's heads as fast as lightning. After doing all this, Qin Feng spat out a mouthful of blood. Even he felt that it was very strenuous to fight against 3 rank 2 spirit beasts at once. After killing the spirit beasts that were still alive in the courtyard, Qin Feng glanced at Ouyang Shi's room. His eyes darkened. Then, without hesitation, he rushed out of the courtyard. In the night sky, a bright moon was hanging high. The bright moonlight poured down like water and sprinkled on the mountain forest. It was as if a thin layer of smoke was lingering, plain and hazy. In the mountain forest, the terrain was undulating, and there were giant trees one after another. This mountain forest was very quiet. The original cries of apes and tigers had disappeared, leaving only silence. Qin Feng stood there with a stone axe in his hand. His body was stained with blood, but it could not hide his intimidating heroic spirit. Even though he had killed close to 20 spirit beasts, there were still 30 to 40 spirit beasts gathering outside. It was a black mass with a murderous aura. There was a black violent ape that was 7 to 8 meters tall. Its body was covered with thick black hair, and its pupils were cold. It revealed its snow-white fangs. There was a black eagle that was circling in the sky. Under the moonlight, it emitted a cold metallic luster. A few dozen meters away, an earth-colored earth spirit monkey was hanging from a tree branch. On the other side, a lynx was standing on a slope. Its yellow fur was standing upright, and its eyes were green. It was ready to pounce at any time. These spirit beasts were all rank 2 spirit beasts. They were the biggest threat to Qin Feng. However, his expression did not change at all. He knew that he could not show the slightest bit of fear at this moment. He walked forward step by step. When he reached the saber-toothed tiger, he stopped. He looked at the saber-toothed tiger on the ground with its hind legs broken. The saber-toothed tiger was baring its fangs at him on the ground. A cold light flashed in his eyes. Boom! The stone axe in his hand smashed down and almost broke the saber-toothed tiger in half. He used the devouring power to devour the saber-toothed tiger's blood and chi. He recovered a lot of energy. Roar! Screech! Stimulated by the strong smell of blood, these spirit beasts' eyes turned red. They roared and charged at him. Come on! Qin Feng roared. The mental energy in his mind swept out without holding back. It turned into a mental energy wave and swept forward. The sky and the ground were covered in it. All the spirit beasts' movements slowed down. Qin Feng's body swayed, and he felt dizzy. This was caused by overusing his mental energy. Damn it, he cursed in his heart. When fighting against these spirit beasts, his mental energy was his greatest trump card. It could restrain many spirit beasts. However, the previous fierce battle had consumed a lot of his mental energy. It was almost exhausted. I have to hold on. Chapter 67. Chapter 67. To fight a blood-soaked battle in front of them. The 7 to 8 meter tall black ape grabbed a 10-meter long boulder and smashed it toward Qin Feng. Boom! The air exploded, creating a terrifying shockwave that directly covered Qin Feng. Chi! The giant black condor swooped down, flapping its wings, and black feathers rained down. The lynx transformed into a bolt of yellow lightning and arrived in front of Qin Feng almost instantaneously. Its sharp, snow-white claws slashed at him, intending to cut him in half. Hanging on the tree, the spirit monkey waved its big claws and directly blocked Qin Feng's left side. The cold light was dazzling. Yeah! In the distance, the weasel let out a sharp cry. This was similar to a psychic attack, interfering with Qin Feng. In just a split second, more than a dozen spirit beasts rushed over. The second-ranked spirit beast was in the lead, and a powerful airflow swept across the area. Before the attack arrived, the soil on the ground was lifted up layer after layer. 4 mid-second-ranked spirit beasts and more than 10 early second-ranked spirit beasts. This was a devastating disaster for any early sea expansion expert. Even an ordinary late-stage pioneer sea realm expert would feel his scalp go numb. Qin Feng stared at the most powerful spirit beasts. Based on their attacking positions and directions, he determined the best way to avoid them. He quickly formed a seal with his hands, and the power of water seeped out from the air. Water vapor filled the air and blurred his vision. Qin Feng twisted his body and grabbed the lynx's paw. His spiritual force hit its head. At the moment when its body was sluggish, Qin Feng threw it behind him. Bang! The Earth Spirit Monkey didn't manage to grab Qin Feng with its claw. Instead, the mountain cat was sent flying and crashed into the black ape's leg. The black ape staggered, and the huge rock in its hand fell, smashing the Earth Spirit beast into a bloody mess. Of course, this was because Qin Feng had used his mental strength to attack the Earth Spirit Monkey. Otherwise, with its agility, it would have dodged the attack. Whoosh, whoosh, whoosh. Dozens of black feathers shot out like arrows. Qin Feng dodged quickly. Crack! Suddenly, a bolt of lightning exploded and struck Qin Feng's body like a bolt of lightning, causing his nimble body to freeze in an instant. Poochie! At the same time, a feather pierced his throat. Qin Feng's pupils shrank fiercely. He touched his neck and immediately let out a sigh of relief. The feather had only scratched his skin and did not really pierce his throat. He quickly shifted his gaze. Among the group of beasts, there was a small golden beast with a golden horn on its head. At this moment, there were still electric arcs surging around it. Thunderbolt. Qin Feng frowned. Thunderbolt was born with lightning. Although its attack power was not good, the speed of the lightning was very fast. If it was a sneak attack, it would be almost impossible for people at his level to avoid it. Qin Feng dodged left and right amidst the horde of beasts while brandishing his stone axe. Streaks of bloody light could be seen as he moved towards the thunderbolt. With this thing around, he couldn't focus on the battle and had to get rid of it. However, Thunderbolt seemed to know his intentions and did not give Qin Feng a chance to get close. Wong. Qin Feng's head was dizzy as if his mind was hit by something. He instantly woke up, but he was still hit by the spirit beast and was sent flying. Soon, Qin Feng sensed what was causing trouble with his spirit power. At the same time, several powerful attacks came. Qin Feng identified them and supported his body with his spirit power, dodging a few attacks. When the last attack came, Qin Feng raised his stone axe and met it head-on. In midair, Qin Feng couldn't gather his spirit power and was sent flying. His body exploded in the air, and with a crack, an electric arc shot towards him. Water God Technique, Superpower of Water. Qin Feng roared. The power of water in this area was so dense that it was like a downpour. Liquid was conductive, so when the water came into contact with the lightning, the area was covered in lightning. Water droplets fell from the sky, and spirit beasts fell. Their bodies were numb from the electricity, and their limbs twitched. Qin Feng's spirit power wrapped around his body, and he was not drenched by the water. He quickly rushed towards Weasel. The latter screamed, turned around, and ran. Qin Feng used his spirit power and swept at Weasel. The latter immediately held his head and rolled around in pain. Qin Feng landed and split Weasel in two with his axe. Bang! Just after dealing with Weasel, Qin Feng was hit by Thunderbolt again, causing him to stagger and his shoulder to be scorched. Roar! The ape roared, and the black ape walked over with trembling steps. Black spirit power burst out from its palm, and it slapped forward. Qin Feng steadied his body and fiercely swung the stone axe in his right hand towards the incoming palm of the black ape. Whoosh! The stone axe cut through the sky, and the air exploded, making a sharp sound. The stone axe was already very heavy, and Qin Feng injected spirit power into it. Coupled with its speed, the impact of the stone axe instantly became terrifying. Panic appeared in the black ape's eyes as it instinctively sensed danger. It wanted to move its body, but it was too late. It couldn't even retract its palm. Puff! Blood splattered as the stone axe heavily hit the black ape's palm. The powerful impact made the black ape's body tremble violently. Poochie! The stone axe tore the black ape's palm, causing it to be badly mutilated. White bones could be seen, and the lower half was broken. Blood gushed out like a small waterfall and dyed the forest red. After piercing through the black ape's palm, the stone axe's speed decreased slightly. Under the black ape's panicked gaze, the stone axe shot into its chest. Spirit power and energy surged at the same time, causing its chest to explode and blood to spurt out. Roar! The black ape screamed and staggered back. With a whoosh, Qin Feng used his spirit power to retrieve the stone axe. Almost at the same time, he moved his body to avoid a lightning bolt and the lynx's attack. Then he used his spirit power to form a spear and aimed it at the black eagle in the sky. The black eagle's eyes were sharp. It spread its wings and swooped down. It stretched out its claws and wanted to crush Qin Feng's head, but now it was terrified, and its feathers stood up. It quickly changed its direction to avoid Qin Feng's spirit attack. Puff! However, it was still too late. It avoided the first attack, but the second one directly penetrated its chest and easily pierced its heart. With a plop, the black eagle fell and died on the ground. This was the third middle stage, second-order spirit beast that Qin Feng killed after risking his life here. Boom! When he used his spirit power to kill the black eagle, Qin Feng slapped out with his palms. His spirit power surged and dissolved the attacks of a group of early-stage, second-order spirit beasts. Qin Feng dared not say that he had experienced hundreds of battles, but he had walked out of killing. Therefore, even if he was in a killing situation, he reacted quickly and seized the opportunity to severely injure and kill the powerful spirit beasts here. However, facing so many second-order spirit beasts, even if he had achieved amazing results, it was still very dangerous. At this moment, Thunderbolt exploded again and hit him. Bang! A gopher darted out from the ground behind him and hit Qin Feng's body, sending him flying and vomiting blood. Meow! The lynx howled and waved its sharp claws to attack Qin Feng from the right, wanting to tear him apart. Boom! Qin Feng raised his hand and threw the stone axe. The lynx knew how terrifying the stone axe was, so it quickly dodged. It was so fast that it appeared beside Qin Feng in the blink of an eye. Puff! Qin Feng's shoulder was hit by the lynx, and a piece of flesh was torn off. He endured the pain, and his spirit power roared out, hitting the lynx and stopping it. Chapter 68. Sudden help arrives after landing. Qin Feng stared at Thunderbolt. His eyes glinted coldly as he charged forward. Thunderbolt was too much of a threat to him. He had been attacked many times, and most of the time, he was hit by Thunderbolt, which caused his reaction to be slower by half a beat. Boom! Spiritual energy surged as Qin Feng charged forward. He was no longer worried, as he had already killed 4 mid-stage, rank 2 spirit beasts. He charged towards Thunderbolt. Spiritual energy gushed out from his body as he slashed left and right with the stone axe in his hand. At the same time, he spread out his spiritual energy to attack the spirit beasts. For a moment, Qin Feng carved out a bloody path. Along the way, more than a dozen spirit beasts died under his axe. But at the same time, his injuries worsened. He suffered a few heavy blows, and his abdomen was cut open. That was when he chopped off the cockroach's head and was hit by its chainsaw-like forelimbs. Qin Feng's eyes were red. He ignored everything and charged towards Thunderbolt. Go to hell! Qin Feng shouts and leaps up fiercely. Holding the stone axe in his hand, he slashes down heavily at the thunder and lightning beast. Whoosh! But at this moment, a giant tail swung and sent him flying. While his body was still in midair, Qin Feng spat out a mouthful of blood. He gritted his teeth and desperately squeezed out his spiritual energy to control his body so that he would not fall into the spirit beasts. Crack! An electric arc hit him, causing his vision to turn black. Qin Feng opened his eyes abruptly and twisted his body. After landing on the ground, he rolled a few times. Rumble! A loud sound rang out, and the earth shook a few times. Qin Feng's eardrums hurt from the sound, but he didn't have time to care about this. His mental strength spread out like a tide, sweeping in all directions, slowing down the speed of the spirit beasts that were waiting for an opportunity to kill him, giving him time to recover. After a few breaths of time, Qin Feng recovered. His eyes swept over like lightning and saw a huge python that was as thick as a water bucket. On the other side, a huge brown bear that was almost the same size as the black ape was pounding its chest and madly running towards him. There are more. Qin Feng's face was slightly pale. 2 more middle-stage, second-ranked spirit beasts had appeared. This was too dangerous for him. With his current physical condition, It was already very difficult for him to deal with ordinary early-stage, second-rank spirit beasts. Even with his temperament, he couldn't help but feel a sense of helplessness. Both his spiritual power and spiritual power were greatly consumed, especially his spiritual power. The explosion just now had already used up the last bit of his spiritual power. Now that he had lost his mental power, which was born to restrain spirit beasts, he had lost his trump card. Is it over? How can I give up? Qin Feng roared in a low voice and suddenly raised his head. His eyes were as bright as the sun, as if they were bursting with 2 rays of light. At this moment, the 100 Calamity Heaven Devouring technique was unleashed once again. Unexpectedly, its power had increased again. Even the blood and qi of those dead spirit beasts had been devoured by him. Moreover, the speed of his devouring was much faster than before. A large amount of blood qi surged into his body and turned into spirit energy, causing his dry and desolate qi sea to glow again. Since you want to die so much, I'll fulfill your wish. Qin Feng threw away the stone axe. Without the suppression, the circulation of his spiritual power became smoother. Since his mental power had been depleted, he had no choice but to use his spiritual power to fight with them. With a whoosh, his speed reached the limit. It was unbelievably fast as he rushed toward the brown bear. Roar! The brown bear roared angrily. Its huge paw brought along a strong wind as it slapped toward Qin Feng. However, in the next moment, its eyes revealed a human-like fear. Qin Feng's fist that was rushing toward it made it tremble uncontrollably. Go to hell! Qin Feng shouted and unleashed the 3 tyrants of the King of Fighters. Its power skyrocketed, especially after he went all out and let go of his limbs, regardless of the consequences and the cost. He wanted to kill here. Boom! The first punch landed, and the brown bear's huge body shook. The second punch landed, and the bear's paw exploded, causing blood to splatter everywhere. Third tyrant fist. For the third punch, Qin Feng landed on the brown bear's chest. The ferocious power blasted down and opened up a large bloody hole in the brown bear's chest. Qin Feng had penetrated its body. The brown bear's huge body shook and then collapsed with a loud bang. Poochie! Qin Feng had just spat out a mouthful of blood when a whip attacked him, and he was sent flying. At the same time, an electric arc hit him, and his body emitted a burst of green smoke. In the process of flying, some energy beams shot by early-stage spirit beasts hit his body. Qin Feng groaned. His injuries worsened, and he was sent flying far away. Qin Feng rolled a few more times on the ground before he stopped. His head was dizzy, and all the bones in his body seemed to have fallen apart. At this moment, a group of spirit beasts surrounded him. Some had fangs, wide mouths, and sharp claws. They all stretched out toward Qin Feng, who was lying on the ground. At this moment, Qin Feng's consciousness was muddled, and he had yet to wake up. In the darkness, Qin Feng could vaguely feel that a terrifying attack was about to land on him. However, he couldn't move at all. After suffering continuous electric shocks and heavy injuries, his body had reached its limit. Boom! A series of explosions resounded, accompanied by the mournful cries of the spirit beasts. Qin Feng didn't feel that he was being dismembered. He couldn't help but open his eyes, and his gaze immediately focused. How is it? You won't die, right? Su Qin turned around and smiled at Qin Feng. I won't die. Qin Feng struggled to sit up and said weakly, Why are you here? We've always been here. It's just that our cultivation is different from yours. Lei Zhan continued with a smile. You're lucky. Coincidentally, we successfully broke through today, so we wanted to meet up with you. Where's Ouyang Shi? Xiao Yun asked. His expression slightly changed as he said, Could it be that she's already? Qin Feng waved his hand and said, She's breaking through to the late stage of the Pioneer Sea Realm. Breaking through at this time? Aren't you courting death? Xiao Yun frowned. Just as he was speaking, he suddenly thought of something. He looked at the corpses of the spirit beasts on the ground and looked at Qin Feng in disbelief, asking, These spirit beasts were all killed by you? Su Qin and Lei Zhan also looked at Qin Feng in shock. So many second-rank spirit beasts were comparable to early-stage pioneer sea realm spirit beasts, and they were all killed by Qin Feng. Qin Feng stood up with difficulty and coughed. There might be late-stage second-rank spirit beasts here. Only when Ouyang she breaks through to the late stage of the pioneer sea realm will we have a chance to survive. So before that, we can't let her be disturbed. The three of them were dumbfounded, looking at the corpses of the spirit beasts on the ground, and then looking at Qin Feng. A numb feeling rushed to their heads. They were so shocked that they couldn't speak. "How did you do it?" Long Zhan asked with difficulty. They knew that Qin Feng had just become an elementary spirit master. At most, he was similar to an early-stage pioneer sea realm human. Although his spirit power could restrain spirit beasts, it was still impossible for him to do this. Adding the corpses of the spirit beasts in the courtyard, there were at least 30 to 40 early-stage, second-rank spirit beasts that had died in his hands. There are also several mid-stage, second-rank spirit beasts. Was Qin Feng's combat strength going to defy the heavens? Qin Feng shook his head, and his eyes gradually became fierce. He said in a deep voice, "Put your doubts in your stomach. I'll tell you clearly that there's at least one late-stage rank 2 spirit beast here. Only Ouyang she can deal with it after successfully breaking through." Chapter 69. Dual Pupil Wolf King. The bright moonlight shone down, illuminating the land in a deathly white. The ground was littered with corpses and bones. The ground was dyed red, and the intense smell of blood filled the air. It was like a living hell. Xiao Yun and the other two had arrived in time to resolve Qin Feng's crisis. However, the situation was still not good. They did not have the mental power to restrain the spirit beasts, so they could only rely on their strength to fight. Facing so many spirit beasts, even they were in danger. Thunderbolt and the last mid-stage rank 2 spirit beast, the forest boa, were too big of a threat to them. Qin Feng circulated the 100 calamity heaven-devouring art and crazily devoured the blood of the spirit beasts. Strands of energy entered his body, causing his complexion to improve. At the same time, his mental power recovered a little. After a while, Qin Feng slowly opened his eyes, and a fierce look flashed across them. He calmly devoured the blood of the spirit beasts around him, while his mental power silently spread toward Thunderbolt on the ground. Blood flowed like a river, flowing along the terrain. Qin Feng glanced at it, and an undetectable smile appeared on his face. He formed a seal with both hands, and the blood immediately flowed in reverse, flowing toward the forest boa. Under the cover of the spirit beast corpses and the vegetation on the ground, no one noticed. Hold on for a little longer. Qin Feng slowly closed his eyes. Using the 100 calamity heaven-devouring art, the water god art, and his mental power at the same time placed a huge burden on him. Although the energy continuously flowed into his body could not help but tremble. With a swoosh, Qin Feng suddenly opened his eyes. The mental energy that was entrenched around the thunder lightning beast was like a hibernating cheetah, swiftly and violently attacking. It transformed into numerous sharp weapons and instantly dismembered the thunder lightning beast at an inconceivable speed. Almost no one noticed, and Thunderbolt, who was a great threat, was killed. At the same time, Qin Feng suddenly leapt up and charged toward the forest boa. Then, he leapt high into the air, and the mental power he had prepared earlier suddenly pulled back, sweeping the stone axe to the forest boa's vital point. On the ground, the blood that had gathered here was like a blood-colored chain that tightly bound the forest boa's body. At the same time, Qin Feng also jumped to the same spot. Holding the stone axe, he gathered all his recovered strength into the stone axe. With a sudden twist of his body, he used all his strength to fiercely chop at the forest boa's weak spot. His attack was too sudden, and it happened in the blink of an eye. Not to mention Lin Ho, even Xiao Yun, Su Qin, and Long Zhan didn't notice it at all. With a loud boom and a flash of blood, the forest boa's massive body collapsed. The last intermediate second-rank spirit beast died. Qin Feng used the last of his strength to kill the forest boa that posed the greatest threat, and then fell head first to the ground. Fortunately, Su Qin reacted quickly and caught it in time. Otherwise, before he was killed by the spirit beast, he would have fallen to his death. You killed the forest boa in one move. Although it was a sneak attack, to be able to do it in your current state is truly shocking. Su Qin looked at Qin Feng, and his eyes flashed with deep admiration. Now I believe that all of this was done by you. In their eyes, it was unimaginable for a heavily injured body to deal with Thunderbolt and the intermediate second-rank forest boa, but Qin Feng had done it. He was already so powerful when he was heavily injured. What reason did they have to not believe that he could do this in his peak state? I'll leave the rest to you guys, Qin Feng said weakly, and the dizziness in his mind became more and more serious. Don't worry. Without Thunderbolt's sneak attack, and without the forest boa's attack, the remaining spirit beasts were forced to retreat under the attacks of the three people. Looking at this scene, Qin Feng didn't feel the slightest bit of joy. Instead, his heart became even heavier. To be able to make so many spirit beasts and intermediate second-rank spirit beasts obey, there was definitely an even more powerful spirit beast. At the very least, there had to be a late second-rank spirit beast. Also, he had sensed an even more terrifying spirit beast pressure. But why hadn't it appeared yet? Looking around, Qin Feng frowned. He endured the mental and physical exhaustion and used the 100 Calamity heaven-devouring art to continue devouring the spirit beast's blood. In the face of unknown danger, he wasn't used to placing all his hopes on others. He would only be at ease if he had some strength. A few minutes later, Xiao Yun and the others had dealt with the remaining spirit beasts, and Qin Feng had recovered some of his strength. It seems that we don't need Ouyang Shi. The three people laughed. Qin Feng shook his head. Just as he was about to speak, his expression suddenly changed, and he shouted, "Be careful." In fact, he didn't need to say anything. The three of them had already sensed it. They turned around at the same time, and their spirit energy exploded in front of them. At the same time, a giant claw slammed down. Spirit energy surged, and the wind wreaked havoc. Xiao Yun and the others were instantly sent flying by this force. When the giant claw landed, the ground caved in. From this, it could be seen how terrifying this attack was. The ferocious wind blew, and Qin Feng was sent flying, coughing up large mouthfuls of blood. He glanced at the spirit beast that attacked from the corner of his eye, and his heart twitched violently. It was actually a dual pupil wolf king, and behind it was a pack of dual pupil wolves. It's actually this kind of spirit beast. Qin Feng coughed up another mouthful of blood. He had a premonition that the situation was serious. It definitely wasn't as simple as he had guessed. Dual pupil wolves were very rare among spirit beasts. They were also very powerful, and their bloodline was very pure. Their intelligence was very close to that of humans, and the Wolf King among them had intelligence that wasn't inferior to humans. At this moment, Qin Feng finally understood why this group of spirit beast attacks were so disciplined and targeted. There were feints, main attacks, and auxiliary attacks. It turned out that the dual pupil Wolf King was controlling them. Their eye power was born with the ability to control. However, dual pupil wolves usually lived in the snowy, heavenly mountains, which were very far from here. How could they appear here? Even if there were a small number of dual pupil wolves in other places, how could they appear in the city? Qin Feng didn't have the time to think about this. After being shaken, his body became even weaker. He couldn't muster any strength, and his body fell heavily to the ground. However, at this moment, he fell into a soft embrace. A faint fragrance entered his nose, and it actually made him more awake. You finally succeeded. Qin Feng smiled weakly. Although he didn't open his eyes, only Ouyang Shi could emit such a fragrance. Looking at Qin Feng's pale face, Ouyang Shi felt an indescribable pain in her heart. A layer of mist unknowingly appeared in her beautiful eyes. Rest well. Leave the rest to me, she said softly, and her tone was unprecedentedly gentle. The corner of Qin Feng's mouth twitched. He couldn't hold on any longer and fainted. Ouyang Shi gently put down Qin Feng and said to Xiao Yun and the other two, "Take care of him." Chapter 70. Heavily injured when Qin Feng opened his heavy eyelids, what entered his eyes was a rather warmly decorated room with a faint fragrance permeating the air. Where is this? Suddenly, his eyes narrowed as he recalled the day when he fought with the spiritual beasts until he was exhausted. In the end, Ouyangxi appeared. He didn't know what happened after that, but since he didn't die, the crisis that day must have been resolved. But where is this? Qin Feng wanted to prop himself up, but he realized that he was too weak to even move. He hurriedly checked the condition of his body and found that his sea of qi was empty and lifeless. There was no trace of spiritual power. The 9 spiritual veins had lost the nourishment of spiritual power and were dry. Some parts of them were even broken. A sharp pain assaulted him. Qin Feng rubbed his forehead strenuously. The mental energy in his mind had dried up, leaving only a little bit of origin energy. The injury this time is really serious. Qin Feng couldn't help but smile bitterly. This was the most serious injury he had ever suffered. He was almost crippled. Under normal circumstances, it would take at least 2 to 3 months to recover from this kind of injury. This was also what Qin Feng was worried about. He didn't know how long he had been unconscious, but it couldn't have been short. The great conquering army was approaching. So how could he have time to recover? Creak. A clear knock on the door entered Qin Feng's ears. He vaguely saw a figure walk in. The door was pushed open, and a thin figure appeared in Qin Feng's line of sight. It was a young girl in a light blue dress. She looked simple. The young girl's eyes contained some timidity. After the young girl came in, she quickly saw Qin Feng, who had opened his eyes. Under Qin Feng's gaze, she panicked and rubbed her small hands on her body. Then, she said in a low and timid voice, with a trace of surprise in her voice, "You're awake?" Looking at the young lady's appearance, a forced smile appeared on Qin Feng's face. After that, he nodded. Qin Feng guessed that this should be the city lord's mansion, and his anxious heart finally relaxed. Looking at the young girl carrying the food, Qin Feng's stomach suddenly growled. But before he could speak, the girl put down the food and hurriedly ran out. "What's going on?" Qin Feng smiled bitterly. Not long after, a slightly anxious figure ran in. "Little pervert, you're not dead yet." Before he even got close, Qin Feng heard Ouyangxing's voice. "When did I become a little pervert?" Qin Feng was startled. He shook his head and smiled bitterly as he looked at Ouyangxing. Although she had called him a little pervert, her expression was clearly happy and excited. Therefore, he didn't argue with her. "I'm hungry." Ouyangxing brought a bowl of porridge, gently scooped a spoonful, and fed it to Qin Feng. Qin Feng opened his mouth with difficulty and drank a mouthful. The moment it entered his mouth, there was a burst of coldness. This was a kind of warm and refreshing coldness. With one mouthful, the coldness went down his throat and reached the bottom of his heart, causing his entire body to emit a warm and refreshing feeling. After the cold porridge entered his stomach, the warm and jade-like coldness flowed through his body. Wherever it passed, the stinging pain that was still emitting suddenly subsided by a lot. This is ice porridge made from ice lotus. It is very helpful in healing the injured body and reducing pain. Looking at Qin Feng's astonished expression, Ouyangxing said unhappily, "Even I have never received such treatment. You also said that this is for healing. I'm afraid you don't want to drink it yourself." Ouyangxing thought about it and felt that it was true. She didn't want to suffer such serious injuries just to drink this porridge. "I really don't understand. After suffering such serious injuries, why aren't you dead yet?" Ouyangxing muttered softly as she fed Qin Feng the porridge. Hearing this, Qin Feng almost spat out the porridge in his mouth. "You really wanted to die that much? How is that possible? If you didn't block so many spirit beasts, something would have happened to my sister. I can't thank you enough." Ouyangxing shook her head, stared at Qin Feng, and said seriously, "I'm concerned about you. Can't you tell?" "I really can't tell." Qin Feng pursed his lips. Ouyangxing's little face sank and said, "Qin Feng, don't think that you can take advantage of me just because you saved my sister." Qin Feng was speechless. When did he take advantage of her? Right? How many days have I been unconscious? Qin Feng asked weakly. It's already been 3 days. Ouyang Jing said and muttered softly, strange. Even the spirit alchemist said there was no hope. How did he survive? It's really puzzling. As she said that, she even cooperated and shook her head, revealing a serious expression. Hearing her words and seeing her like that, Qin Feng was so angry that his face turned red and he coughed violently. What's wrong with you? Are you going to die? Ouyang Jing suddenly became anxious. You can't die. My sister's kindness hasn't been repaid. Forget it. If you want to go, then go. Don't force it. This kindness will be recorded in the Qin family's account. Even if I don't die, I'll be angered to death by you. Qin Feng glared at Ouyang Jing. Then his eyes rolled back and he fainted. When he woke up, it was already 2 days later. This time, he woke up with more strength in his body and some mental strength in his mind. He was not as weak as last time, when he fainted after a few stimulations. Now, he could barely move a few times, and his consciousness was more awake. He quickly looked inside himself and saw the messy scene in his body. Even his spirit veins showed signs of being twisted and broken. This kind of injury was terrifying. His mind sank into his energy reserve. The energy reserve that was originally overflowing with spirit energy and full of power was now empty, without a trace of spirit energy. It's so heavy. Qin Feng's heart sank. Last time, he wasn't fully conscious, so he only did a rough check. Now that he looked carefully, he knew how serious his injuries were. No wonder Ouyang Jing kept muttering about how he was not dead. If it were anyone else, it would be very difficult for them to survive with this kind of injury. It seems that I need to recuperate. Qin Feng thought to himself. After all, his temperament was far from ordinary. So, although his injuries were serious, it was not impossible for him to recover as long as he was given some time. After all, he still had the demon eye, who knew everything. Thinking of the demon eye, Qin Feng's heart moved. He quickly contacted it. Old demon, are you there? After a moment of silence, the demon eye's soft voice entered Qin Feng's heart. You're not dead, so how can I die? However, that disgusting voice sounded extremely weak at this moment. It was as if the voice would disappear if it was louder. Why are you so weak? You're not faking it, are you? Last time, you were still alive and jumping around. Pretend to be a furball, my ass. The demon eye said in exasperation. It's all because of your useless companions. They delayed your best treatment time. If I hadn't been using my power to maintain your vitality, you would have died because of them. Chapter 71. Cultivation. Qin Feng stared blankly for a moment, then bitterly smiled. Is it that exaggerated? What do you think? The demon eye asked back. Your spiritual power and spiritual power were exhausted, and you suffered so many attacks. There were even 1 or 2 fatal wounds. You just held on to your last breath and didn't explode. You killed 9 mid-second order spiritual beasts and more than 30 early second order spiritual beasts by yourself. Do you think you're a god of war? After the battle, you were already on the verge of death, but your useless companions not only didn't see it, but also analyzed where those spiritual beasts came from. At that time, I was so angry that I wanted to slap them to death. But I couldn't expose myself, so I could only use my power to preserve your vitality. Hearing this, Qin Feng grinned. He really didn't expect his injuries to be so serious. From the demon eye's tone, he could tell that the demon eye was really angry at that time. It clearly could have preserved its power, but it was delayed just like that. Alas, it happened anyway, so there's no point in arguing about it. The demon eye sighed and said helplessly, I attacked once before, and that day I extended your vitality. I consumed too much energy. This time, I guess I'll really have to sleep for a while. If you encounter any problems during this time, you can solve them yourself. After saying this, the demon eye became silent, without any fluctuations. By the way, while you were asleep, I refined some healing pills for you. Take one every 3 days, and within half a month, You'll be as lively as a dragon and as lively as a tiger. Suddenly, the demon eye spoke, and several medicinal pills appeared in his hand. Damn, you still have the energy to refine pills? Aren't you very weak? You heartless bastard. I used the last of my power to refine them. Otherwise, you wouldn't have recovered before the great conquest. The demon, I said angrily. Fortunately, I asked you to prepare more medicinal materials every time. Otherwise, there's really no way. Qin Feng was startled. After a moment of silence, he asked, "Why are you suddenly doing so much for me?" The demon I was silent for a long time before saying, "It wasn't easy to sign a devil's contract with you. After 3 years, I can take over your body. I can't let you die. Otherwise, all these years of waiting will be in vain." Qin Feng didn't speak. His expression was a bit complicated. The demon eye had followed him for many years, and he wished he could kill it. But after interacting with it for the past few days, he discovered that the strong sense of rejection had weakened a great deal. He even started to rely on it, subconsciously treating it as his teacher. Although the demonic eye had its reasons, he had a feeling that things weren't as simple as he thought. Don't think too much. Recuperate well. Don't die so easily on the St. Ruin trip. I don't want to appear on your corpse when I wake up. Qin Feng nodded lightly and cast these thoughts aside. His eyes flickered as he thought about what to do next. Based on his calculations, he had less than half a month left in the City of Sin. The most important thing right now was to recover as soon as possible. Luckily, the demonic eye brewed a lot of healing dawn for him, or else he really wouldn't know what to do. Thinking about it, he swallowed a dan. A faint amount of energy circled around his body and healed his damaged spiritual meridians. Before long, Ouyang Qing Tian brought the mayor's palace's only spiritual alchemist to visit him. A miracle! What a miracle! After checking, the white-haired spiritual alchemist exclaimed, "This fella's life force is extremely tenacious. It is shocking." Hearing this, Ouyang Qing Tian was ecstatic. "Elder Gu, when will he recover? Based on his physique, it will take at least a month. Plus," Elder Gu shook his head, "even if he recovers, he will become a handicap." "Elder Gu, is there no other way?" Old Gu thought for a moment and said, "If you want to repair a damaged spiritual vein, it's impossible to use spiritual liquid. Only high-grade pills can do it. However, even a Tier 3 spiritual alchemist would not have full confidence in refining those pills." Ouyang Qing Tian's eyes darkened. Ignoring the fact that a third-realm alchemist might not be able to brew the dawn, would he be able to hire a third-realm alchemist in his tiny little City of Sin? Plus, even if he could, where would he find a third-realm alchemist? Those alchemists who have reached the third realm have all been recruited by the people from the capital. Xiao Feng, don't worry. You ended up like this because of Xiao Shi. Even if you were a handicap, I will ensure your Qin family's safety for 100 years, Ouyang Qing Tian said. Thank you. Qin Feng softly smiled. You are unfazed by honor and disgrace. You are able to remain unmoved by the ups and downs of life. With this mentality, even if you enter other professions in the future, I believe you will achieve great things. Elder Gu nodded in appreciation. Qin Feng twitched his lips. If he didn't have the dawn, he would have cursed out loud. How could he remain calm? After the two left, Ouyang Jing came over and shook her head. She sighed. Even though you won't die, your body is useless now. What a pity. The corner of Qin Feng's mouth twitched, but he didn't care. He could tell that Ouyang Jing acted mature in front of outsiders, but in reality, she was lacking in her brain. Even though what she said wasn't pleasant to hear, the worry and regret on her face was sincere. Time passed by peacefully. It had been a week since Qin Feng woke up last time. During this time, Qin Feng had been recuperating in his room and rarely went out. Little pervert, are you recovering well? Ouyang Jing pushed the door open and entered with food in her hands. Seeing Qin Feng's unrestricted movements, she smiled. Looks like after a while, you'll be able to jump around. Let's eat. With me, the little princess, serving you personally, what regrets do you have in your life? Consider it a waste. Speaking up to this point, Ouyang Jing suddenly stopped and carefully looked at Qin Feng. Even though her brain was prone to spasms sometimes, she knew that Qin Feng cared about his body the most. With his talent and the abnormal battle results that night, he would definitely become a figure in the future. Even she felt extremely regretful that it was ruined just like that. Not to mention how she felt about it. To be able to be served by the little princess, I'm really lucky. Qin Feng smiled, indicating that he didn't care. In this way, Ouyang Jing breathed a sigh of relief. The atmosphere quickly became lively, and she didn't dare to mention anything about cultivation anymore. All right, you should console your sister a little. Don't make her feel guilty. In that situation back then, if I didn't stand out, the two of us would have died. Now, this is already the best ending. My matter has nothing to do with her. These days, Ouyang, she came to see him a few times. Every time, her eyes were red. She couldn't hide her guilt and sadness. How could she let it go? Ouyang Jing sighed and said, "You're right, but everyone knew the situation. If you exposed my sister's position, you could have broken out. But you didn't do so. Instead, you bought enough time for my sister to break through. You almost died, and even your body was crippled. How can my sister act as if nothing happened? Even if I'm her sister, I know that my sister is still alive because of you. So you are her savior. She let you cultivate in her room that she has never let other young people who are not related to her by blood. This means that no matter what happens to you, she won't leave you alone. That's good. Then let her marry me." Qin Feng joked. Chapter 72. Chapter 72 Time of Ease. Qin Feng and Ouyang Jing were stunned. They turned their heads and found that Ouyang she had walked in without them knowing. Seeing her serious look, Qin Feng quickly waved his hand and said, "Don't take it seriously. I was just joking." "But I'm not joking. You're like this because of me. I have the obligation to be responsible for your life." Ouyang she sat down, and her gaze was somewhat evasive when she looked at Qin Feng. Seeing Ouyang she's self-blame, Qin Feng shook his head again. "There's really no need." "Yes," Ouyang she said stubbornly. "With your talent and strength, you will definitely rise up in the future. But because of me, you became a cripple. How can I be indifferent? Marrying you and being responsible for you is my duty." Qin Feng grinned. When this Ouyang, she was stubborn. Even 10 oxen could not pull her back. "I really don't need you to marry me," Qin Feng said. Whether he was crippled or not, what responsibility did she have to take? "You married me not only because of your responsibility." Speaking of this, Qin Feng said with some difficulty, "You're already so old, and I'm still in my prime. The two of us don't deserve each other." "Puchi." Ouyang Jing spat out a mouthful of water. Her eyes widened as she stared at Qin Feng. Finally, she gave him a thumbs up. Ouyang, she was also stunned. Ever since she was young, this was the first time she heard that she wasn't worthy of someone else. Moreover, was she old? She was the #1 beauty in the city of Sin. She had money, power, and looks. Don't even mention marrying her. If anyone wanted to have a meal with her, all she had to do was say the word, and there would be a line from the top to the bottom of the city. This guy actually despised her for being too young. She was only 20 years old, the most beautiful age for a woman. However, in the eyes of this immature little guy, she could be described as old. This kind of lethality was even greater than the power of "you are ugly." That day, you told me that I couldn't feel that it was a woman when I touched it. Now, I realize that you were really merciful. Looking at Ouyang she's wonderful expression, Ouyang Jing held her stomach and laughed. Ouyang she was so angry that her lungs were about to explode. She angrily shouted, "You underdeveloped little thing. If it wasn't for the fact that you saved me, I would have kicked you out long ago." "What did I say? Why are you scolding people?" Qin Feng was confused. He didn't understand why Ouyang she was so angry. "Am I that old? You actually despise me so much." Ouyang she bared her teeth. "I didn't say anything wrong. You're not young anymore, and you even call yourself old mother," Qin Feng said innocently. Seeing that Qin Feng didn't seem to be deliberately teasing her, Ouyang Jing reminded him in a low voice, "The most taboo thing for a woman is for others to say that she's old. My sister is indeed not as small and cute as I am. She's not young either, but you can't say it in front of her. You should say she's pretty and young. If you don't want to marry her, then just say you're not worthy of her. Don't be so honest. Sometimes it's better to say something that goes against your conscience. You damn girl, what are you saying? Ouyang Shi's ears were very sharp. Hearing Ouyang Jing's words, she raised her eyebrows and pulled her head to the table, rubbing it. Ah, sister, don't. I know I'm wrong. You're young and beautiful. Just as Ouyang Shi loosened her grip, Qin Feng said, Ouyang Jing, you don't have a good ending for speaking against your conscience. Ouyang Jing's head rubbed against the ground. She painfully roared, Qin Feng, I hate you. That's enough. Stop rubbing your sister. Qin Feng stepped forward to stop her. Otherwise, this little girl would really hate him. About you marrying me, let's talk about it later. Qin Feng stood up and suddenly felt that something was wrong. Then, his face darkened and he gritted his teeth. I am a man. If anyone is going to marry, it should be me marrying you. How are you going to marry me? All right, everyone leave. I need a rest. Qin Feng impatiently waved his hand. If this continues, his IQ will go into the negatives. In the room, spiritual energy surged. After a long time, Qin Feng slowly opened his eyes and exited from his cultivation state. After 10 days of recuperation, his injuries had almost recovered. Those twisted and broken spiritual veins had also been repaired. It seems like in less than half a month, I will be able to fully recover to my peak. Feeling the abundant spiritual energy in his sea of qi, Qin Feng faintly smiled. With his current condition, he should be able to fully recover after taking another dan. Time passed by slowly. The time for the great conquering war was approaching. The atmosphere in the city of Sin slowly became heavy. On the 13th day, Qin Feng had fully recovered and was even stronger than before. In his sea of qi, his spiritual energy was full. In his mind, his mental energy was also stronger than before he was injured. Although that battle was very dangerous, it couldn't be denied that his battle strength had improved under the training of life and death. Qin Feng came to the meeting hall. The great conquering war would begin in 4 days. Ouyang Shi and the others' training had also finished, and they were all gathered here by Ouyang Qingtian. They were all shocked by Qin Feng's appearance. Why are you here? Ouyang Shi asked. Qin Feng smiled and looked at Ouyang Qingtian. It's time for us to leave. Qin Feng, Ouyang Shi wanted to say something, but she didn't. Xiao Yun and the other two also had expressions of regret. They had all seen how strong Qin Feng was. Losing him was equivalent to losing a powerful helper. Qin Feng, your current situation is not suitable. Ouyang Qingtian helplessly said, Don't worry. Regarding your situation, Qin Feng waved his hand to interrupt him. He didn't say anything, but his body shook and spiritual energy surged out from his body. Wong. Immediately after, spiritual energy overflowed from his mind and turned into various weapons. In the meeting hall, everyone was dumbfounded as they stared at Qin Feng. Even Ouyang Qingtian was absent-minded. Isn't he crippled? Why do I feel that he's stronger than before? Long Zhan blankly said. Ouyang Qingtian was the city lord after all. He quickly understood and immediately said happily, Qin Feng, so you're not crippled? I never said that I can't cultivate. Qin Feng spread out his hands. Ouyang, she opened her mouth and only came back to her senses after a long time. She rushed over and pressed Qin Feng to the ground and violently beat him up. If you're not crippled, why didn't you say so earlier? You even acted pitiful in front of me and made me feel guilty for so many days. You even hinted that I should marry you. You really deserve to be beaten. This brat is so shameless. Xiao Yun and the other two looked at each other and said at the same time, he deserves to be beaten. If I don't kick him, I'll be letting myself down. The three of them walked over and greeted Qin Feng with punches and kicks. Of course, they weren't really fighting. They were just playing around because they were too excited. Qin Feng was dumbfounded. What's going on? He acted pitiful and forced Ouyang Shi to marry him. F***K, you can't be so shameless. Io, Long Zhan, Why are you touching Ouyang-Shi's leg when you're beating me? Xiao Yun, you look decent, but I didn't expect your eyes to be so sharp. You dare to look everywhere. Ouyang-Shi, be careful. Su Qin's mouth is about to kiss your neck. Chapter 73. Night talk. After such a commotion, the few people who were still unfamiliar with each other became closer in an instant. They became much more intimate with each other. All right, we've played and messed around. It's time to get down to business. Ouyang Tian said. Hearing this, everyone's expressions became more serious. Everyone should know that there are strict inspections when entering and exiting the city. This is why I didn't let you leave earlier. It's all the same. Ouyang Tian looked at the three of them and said, the slave-conquering army set out a month ago. The army that is closest to the city of Sin is less than 50 miles away from us. Don't look at the distance. Every time there's a slave-conquering army, there will always be escaped slaves. Therefore, almost all the roads to St. Ryuin are guarded by soldiers from the kingdom. Leaving the city through the normal roads is very dangerous, but you are very lucky. Speaking up to here, Ouyang Tian paused and smiled. In the area where you usually train, I found an ancient cave that leads to the other side of the city of Sin. You can leave from there. An ancient cave that leads to the outside of the city? Ouyang-Shi froze. Xiao Yun and the others didn't understand either. This was discovered by the mayor not long ago. The dual pupil wolf entered the city of Sin from there. Qin Feng said and looked at Ouyang Tian. The latter's eyes flashed with surprise. He had been recovering for the past few days, but he could still analyze the situation so clearly. How did you know? Ouyang-Shi asked. Qin Feng smiled and said, I suspected it when we were attacked that night. I don't believe that the mayor would be so careless as to leave a late-stage, second-level spiritual beast there. But at that time, it was only a suspicion. It wasn't until the dual pupil wolf appeared that I was sure it wasn't a spiritual beast from there. It came from the outside. At that time, I wasn't sure where the dual pupil wolf came from. But after hearing what the mayor said, I connected the dots. Ouyang Tian smiled and nodded. He couldn't hide the admiration in his eyes. Little Shi, although you are very smart in your career, when it comes to calmness and analysis, you are far from Qin Feng's. To be able to make the most correct choice in that situation, to let you break through, and to be able to guess what was wrong, that's not something an ordinary person can do. Ouyang Tian patted Qin Feng's shoulder and said with a smile, with you here, at least I don't have to worry about you losing your lives because of recklessness. Ouyang-Shi pursed her lips, but she had to admit that she had panicked that night. If it wasn't for Qin Feng's calm analysis and strategy, they would have been finished. Xiao Yun and the other two also had expressions of admiration. Qin Feng's strength and intelligence were superior to theirs. They were not narrow-minded people and would not be jealous of others just because they were outstanding. The situation of getting out of the city has been solved, but I want to say that the real danger is still outside. When that time comes, not only will you have to face the harsh environment outside, you will also have to avoid being hunted down by the army and other organizations. There will also be people from the city of Sin who will come after you. At that time, you won't have any protection or resources. You will have to rely on yourselves. You will have to do everything you can to get into the St. Ryuin. Ouyang Tian looked at the five of them and said seriously, I will ask you one last time. Does anyone want to leave? Even if we stay, we will be taken away and become the lowest of slaves. We might as well go out and fight. Xiao Yun faintly smiled. I don't know if this is the right choice, but I know that staying is definitely the wrong choice. Qin Feng shrugged and smiled. So what I need to do is to avoid making the wrong choice. Ouyang-Shi, Long Zhan, and Su Qin all nodded. Under such circumstances, they had no choice but to leave. Good. The city of Sin's hopes will be placed on you. Ouyang Tian smiled. His eyes were a little moist as he said, You can all go back. This will be your last night in the city of Sin. Spend some time with your family. Tomorrow afternoon, gather here. I will send you out of the city at night. After returning home, Qin Feng's heart was heavy. He didn't know what to do. This was the place where he was born and raised. His heart was full of longing. But when it was time to leave, he didn't know what to say. In the end, he sighed and went to Qin Yao's room. Towards his arrival, Qin Yao didn't seem to be surprised. She poured him a cup of tea. "Sister, you have to take care of your body." Qin Yao paused. She filled the cup and handed it to Qin Feng. In a soft voice, she said, "Little Feng, the outside world is not the same as home. You have to think before you do anything." Qin Feng was startled and said in shock, "You know about it? The great conscription of slaves is about to begin. With your talent, you will definitely be conscripted. If that's the case, why don't you just escape from the city? I know that you already have this plan in mind." Qin Yao faintly smiled. Qin Feng understood. It seemed that Qin Yao didn't know about that secret. She was just analyzing the situation. But even so, to be able to analyze the general situation, Qin Feng admired Qin Yao's meticulousness. He didn't hide anything and said, "This is my only way out." "Yes." Qin Yao nodded. Looking at Qin Feng, there was a smile in her eyes, but also heartache. "At such a young age, you have to bear all this. It's all my fault for not being able to protect you." Qin Feng smiled and shook his head. "Sister, this is what I should do. Compared to living a mediocre life, you prefer the current me." Qin Yao was startled. Soon after, she shook her head with a bitter smile and sighed. "I don't know if it's good or bad to have such a smart brother who can read my mind at any time. I don't hide my thoughts in front of you." Qin Feng curled his lips. Qin Yao stroked Qin Feng's head and laughed softly. The two's words diluted the sadness of parting. After talking with Qin Yao, Qin Feng's mood improved a lot. He was no longer so depressed. Looking at the darkening sky, Qin Feng hesitated for a moment and then walked towards Qin Jun's room. "Little Feng." Qin Feng's arrival in the middle of the night startled Qin Jun. He quickly let him in. After entering the room, Lin Hui, Qin Feng's adoptive mother, poured a cup of tea and handed it to Qin Feng. "Little Feng, it's so late. Why are you looking for your parents? Is there something you need?" Taking the tea from Lin Hui, Qin Feng thanked her and sat down. Looking at Qin Feng's and Lin Hui's white hair and the fact that he was about to leave as an escaped slave and bring shame to the family, Qin Feng's nose twitched. Seeing Qin Feng's strange behavior, or perhaps it was due to the connection between father and son, Qin Jun felt that something was wrong. "Little Feng, is there something you want to talk to me about?" Qin Feng nodded and looked at Lin Hui. After hesitating for a long time, he said softly, "Father, I want to know about Mother." All these years, this was not only a knot in Qin Jun's heart, it was also a knot in his heart. He never asked about his mother, but that didn't mean he didn't care. Chapter 74. Chapter 74, The Cursed Family. "Mother, I'm sorry." Qin Feng looked at Lin Hui and apologized. Lin Hui was Qin Yao's mother, not Qin Feng's. At most, she was his adoptive mother. Qin Feng knew that he didn't have a biological mother since he was a child. In addition, he often heard those gossips, so he was a bit of a loner. He was also cold towards Lin Hui because he believed that it was because of her that his mother could not enter the Qin family. However, no matter how Qin Feng treated her, Lin Hui would always take care of him with a smile on her face. She never once complained that he was the child of her love rival. It was because of Lin Hui's meticulous care that Qin Feng's attitude towards her gradually improved. Finally, he was willing to call her mother. If it weren't for the fact that he had to leave and didn't know if he could come back, Qin Feng would never have mentioned his birth mother. Lin Hui rubbed Qin Feng's head and smiled gently. "Brother Jun, there are some things that I should tell Xiao Feng." Qin Jun was stunned. His eyes dimmed. After a long silence, he let out a deep sigh. "Xiao Feng, do you really want to know about your mother?" Qin Feng nodded. Qin Jun sighed again when he saw this, and his tone was filled with bitterness. He said, "You've grown up, and there are some things that you should know. But you know what? If you hadn't asked, I would never have asked. Is my mother's background really that bad? Don't listen to the outside world's nonsense." To Qin Feng's surprise, Qin Jun actually showed a rare display of anger. That tone clearly revealed a trace of ruthlessness and anger. "Who is my mother?" Qin Feng asked. His intuition told him that his guess might be wrong. "Her." Qin Jun touched the jade pendant in front of his chest. His eyes, which had already been stained with wind and frost, actually revealed a deep sense of nostalgia. She is a fairy. Fairy. Qin Feng was startled. From Qin Jun's tone, his mother's background was obviously very noble, but why was he unwilling to announce it to the public? Xiao Feng, it's not that I don't want to tell you who your biological mother is, but I don't dare to tell you, and I don't dare to let outsiders know about that experience. Knowing what Qin Feng was thinking, Qin Jun sighed and said, "Your mother doesn't belong here. She came from a terrifying place. Meeting her was the happiest memory of my life." Speaking up to here, Qin Jun suddenly paused, revealing an awkward expression. Lin Hui sensibly walked away and did her own thing. After she left, Qin Jun smiled bitterly and said, "You still don't know about the world outside of this land, do you? Outside of the primitive land, there is an even more vast world called the Myriad Cloud World. I have been there before." At this moment, Qin Feng's pupils shrank. What? Qin Jun once left this place? How is that possible? Why had he never heard of it before? Allow father to keep a secret. Touching Qin Feng's head, Qin Jun's eyes were filled with pride as she said, "Your mother is the most beautiful person in the world. To be able to meet and fall in love with her is the greatest honor of your father's life." Qin Feng was puzzled. If that was the case, why did he hide it from his birth mother? Understanding Qin Feng's thoughts, Qin Jun said, "That is a terrifying place. Because I am the descendant of a sinner, your mother's clansmen did not allow her to be with me and separated us. I could only leave with you and come back here. The reason why I hid it was because I didn't want you to look for her. After so many years, she should have her own family. Moreover, that place is too terrifying. I didn't want you to get involved. As for how I left, where it was, and how I came back, I can't tell you." Qin Jun sighed and said earnestly, "There are some things that can't be said." Qin Feng clenched his fists tightly and did not ask about his mother. "Little Feng, you can go to St. Ryuin to cultivate, but remember, never leave this land." Suddenly, Qin Jun stared at Qin Feng with shining eyes. Qin Feng was shocked. Listening to his father's tone, he seemed to know everything. And Qin Jun's next words confirmed his thoughts. "I know you're going to leave in a day or two. It is hard to say whether you will live or die. So you want to know about your mother. Don't leave yourself with any regrets." "Father, so you know everything," Qin Feng said. Qin Jun sighed sadly. He would rather not know anything. "But I don't understand. Why do you want to stop me from leaving here?" Qin Feng said, "If you want to get rid of the fate of being enslaved, you have to leave here and find the root of all this." Qin Jun shook his head and said slowly, "Little Feng, listen to me. Don't ask and don't go out. I'm doing this for your own good." Qin Feng's hands clenched slightly. He narrowed his eyes and frowned, thinking about something. Things seemed to be out of his control. Qin Jun's words were obviously hiding something. After a moment of silence, Qin Feng shook his head and said firmly, "Father, what is the reason for you to stop me from going out? If you don't tell me, I won't ask. But since I have embarked on this path, this is my mission." After staring at Qin Feng for a long time, Qin Jun sighed deeply and said slowly. At this moment, his voice suddenly became much heavier. "Because our family is a family that has been cursed by the heavens. A family that has been cursed before." Qin Feng's narrowed eyes suddenly widened. His pupils abruptly shrank as he cried out in shock. Qin Jun nodded and said, "Everything I know was told to me by my father, your grandfather. Our Qin family is cursed. It is said that as long as the members of the Qin family leave the primitive land, misfortune will happen. No one can escape. If you want to live peacefully, you have to stay here." Glancing at the shocked Qin Feng, Qin Jun sighed. His eyes became much sadder. His face was filled with loneliness, and his voice was somewhat hoarse. 10 years ago, your grandfather died because of the curse. 40 years ago, your grandfather didn't listen to your great-grandfather's advice and insisted on going out to make a living. In the end, at that time, your grandfather's strength had reached a very terrifying level. But at that time, misfortune happened. In one night, Your grandfather was seriously injured by an unknown person and almost died. If it wasn't for his great strength, he would have died. But he was also left with unimaginable injuries. 10 years ago, his injuries relapsed, and he finally died. Taking a sip of tea, Qingjin eased the emotions in his heart and continued. 20 years ago, I was as stubborn as your grandfather. Even if your grandfather took out his trump card to cut off the relationship with me, it couldn't stop my young and impetuous heart and disdain for the so-called curse of the family. In the end, under your grandfather's sad gaze, I resolutely embarked on a journey and went to a faraway place to start my own experience. Later, my strength advanced rapidly. 18 years ago, I met your mother. At the most glorious time of my life, when I sneered at the so-called curse, misfortune happened. I encountered something I should never have encountered. I was almost crippled by the people there and almost died tragically. Later, I dragged my broken body and came back here, sadly. Chapter 75. Li Qinfeng looked at him, shocked speechless. What kind of secret had he heard? In the cage of the primitive world, as slaves, countless people wanted to leave, but no one had ever succeeded. And this obstacle, that was like a natural moat, did not seem to have any effect on the Qin family. Not only had Qingjin gone out, his grandfather had gone out as well. In fact, over the generations of the Qin family, many people had gone out. But how come no one knew about it? Not even the slightest bit of news. This was too inconceivable. Xiaofeng, I know your doubts. This is the Qin family's biggest secret. Only the patriarch knows, and it has been passed down from generation to generation. In my generation, I don't want to follow the teachings of the ancestors. I will bury this secret in my heart. As I said earlier, there are some things that can't be said. Slowly unclenching his fists, Qinfeng raised his head and looked at Qingjun. Father, have you ever regretted the decision you made? Qinfeng was stunned. He stared blankly at Qingjun. Some things, you can only know if you regret it after you do it. Even if you regret it, it doesn't mean it's wrong. Qinfeng said softly, perhaps there really is some mysterious curse, but since it has happened to the Qin family, then, as a member of the Qin family, we either have to accept the arrangement of fate and submit to the curse, or we have to go against the heavens and break the so-called curse. Perhaps it will be difficult, and it is not something that can be done overnight, nor can it be done in 1 or 2 generations. But as a member of the Qin family, we have an obligation to fight for the future generations. Perhaps you didn't believe it back then, or perhaps you wanted to break the curse and not let the Qin family be cursed, so you had to leave. Even our ancestors thought the same way. Looking at his son's determined eyes, Qingjin suddenly felt inexplicably absent-minded. Back then, he was just like him, with the same eyes, the same ambition, and the same unwillingness to admit defeat. A gratified smile gradually appeared on his face. He took off the jade pendant from his chest and put on Qinfeng's body. He said, "This is the only thing your mother left for me. She once said that if one day you made a decision, you would be qualified to have it. You don't object?" Qinfeng was stunned. Your great-grandfather tried to stop your grandfather, and your grandfather tried to stop me. Right now, I'm also trying to stop them. However, the result is still destined. Rather than this, I might as well let you out. But Xiaofeng, whether or not you can get out will depend on your own ability. In my generation, I've decided to sever the secrets of the Qin family and the way out. Qinfeng nodded and walked out. After Qinfeng left, the room gradually quieted down. Lin Hui walked over. "Little Hui, it's been hard on you." Qingjin slowly pulled Lin Hui into his arms and said softly. In an instant, Lin Hui's tears flowed out. Which woman would be willing to see her man miss another woman and raise the child of that woman and the man she loved the most? Qingjun gently stroked the woman in his arms. After a moment of silence, he suddenly said, "Do you think Xiaofeng can succeed?" She gently nestled in Qingjun's arms and looked at his resolute face. She said softly, "You said that her son couldn't be an ordinary person without any achievements." Qingjun's body trembled. He murmured, "Yes, her child is destined to be extraordinary. To be honest, sometimes I really hope Xiao Feng can always be an ordinary person and live happily for the rest of his life. Lin Hui nestled in Qin Zhen's arms and said. Qin Zhen put his hand into Lin Hui's beautiful hair and felt the softness of her hair. He slowly said, in this enslaved land, there are many things that he can't choose. And that's not the path he wants to take. If he was just a child of an ordinary family, he might be able to live an ordinary life. But he's not. He's my son. He's not destined to be an ordinary person. He has responsibilities on his shoulders. Some responsibilities are necessary for a man. Running away from them is not the way out. And do you think that being an ordinary person is what he wants? Will he really be happy? He won't. That will only make him more miserable. Only by constantly moving forward and climbing the peak can a man of the Qin family pursue. The so-called curse will be broken sooner or later. Hearing Qin Zhen's words, Lin Hui said helplessly, I know all this. I just feel sorry for him. He's still young. These things shouldn't implicate him. He's just a child. He'll grow up sooner or later. Some things can't be avoided just because you want to. Since he was sent to the Qin family, some things were already predestined. If we deliberately change the trajectory of his life, he'll hate us when he finds out. Let's wait for him to decide everything in the future. Qin Zhen clenched his fingers and said in a deep voice, sigh. After a long sigh, Lin Hui looked at Qin Zhen's face that was no longer young but still charming. Suddenly, she said, do you think something really happened there? All these years, she hasn't. Qin Zhen looked out the window calmly. His face was a little worried. He said helplessly, I don't know. It shouldn't be. After all, who dares to? Maybe one day, Xiao Feng will solve all this. But the situation here, Lin Hui said worriedly. Sigh, let's see what God wants. Since he was sent here, did he just want him to be an ordinary person? Qin Zhen sighed. Forget it. Let's not talk about it. Now that you mention it, I miss Devourer. I have to go and see. Qin Zhen watched as Lin Hui slowly walked out of the room. He muttered to himself in a voice that only he could hear, Xiaolan, what do you think I should do? Our child is on the path that we can't bear to see her go down. After coming out of Qin Zhen's room, Qin Feng's expression became a lot heavier. He never thought that through this conversation, he would inadvertently find out that his family actually hid such a secret, a cursed family. Also, how could the Qin family leave this primitive land so easily? How could it be passed down generation after generation without a single word being leaked? There were too many suspicious points. It was as if a large dark cloud was hanging over the Qin family, making this family a lot more mysterious in an instant. With mixed feelings, Qin Feng returned to his room. He closed the door and lay on his bed, quietly thinking about his father's words. This night was destined to be a sleepless one for him. The next day, Qin Feng, who had been deep in thought for the entire night, got up and strolled around the family. He didn't say anything and didn't do anything. He just wanted to see the place where he had lived for 16 years. The sun was setting in the west. Qin Feng quietly left the family and went to the city lord's palace. At this time, the others had already arrived. Since you're all here, it's time for us to move, Ouyang Qing Tian said. Then, he led the others and left through a secluded path. This ancient cave was connected to the underground. There was a passage here that didn't belong to any era. After the group passed through, they arrived at the forest outside the city of Sin. Chapter 76. Escaping the city of Sin among the mountains and forests, there was a river that had dried up for who knows how many years. The bottom of the river was so dry that there were cracks all over it. In a corner where weeds grew, a rustling sound could be heard. Then a few silhouettes walked out. These people were naturally Qin Feng, Ouyang Shi, and the others who left the city of Sin through the underground passage. I didn't think that there would be such a passage in the city of Sin that connects to the outside world. How magical! Wang Zhan said. Using the blurry moonlight, he looked around and said, this place should be about 10 miles away from the city of Sin. Since it's still dark, I think we should leave this place as soon as possible. The further, the better. Xiao Yun suggested. The few of them discussed for a while and agreed that it would be best to leave under the cover of the night and get as far away from the city of sin as possible. Qin Feng, what do you think? Seeing that Qin Feng was silent, Su Qin couldn't help but ask. I don't think this is a good idea. Qin Feng shook his head. Why is it not a good idea? Qin Feng didn't answer. Instead, he climbed onto a high ground and looked around. After a while, he said, "We will hide here and leave in half a month." Hearing this, everyone was shocked and looked at him suspiciously. Leaving in half a month? Are you kidding me? In 3 days, the slave-conquering army will arrive. They should use this time to get as far away from the city of sin as possible. Why would he stay for half a month? Wasn't he just waiting for people to catch him? Now is the best time for us to leave. If we miss this time, the army from the Empire will arrive, and we won't be able to leave. Xiao Yun and the others felt that it was best to leave immediately. Ouyang Shi frowned. She looked at Qin Feng and asked, "Do you have any ideas?" Qin Feng nodded and said, "The slave-conquering army happens once every 20 years. Even though we haven't experienced it before, we should all know that every time there's a big gathering of slaves, there will always be some escaped slaves. This is already a phenomenon. It's impossible that the people from the Empire don't have a backup plan. Furthermore, the number of people who have managed to successfully enter the St. Ryuin is extremely few. Why is this so? Because most of the people who managed to escape from their residences were killed. This period of time is a sensitive period for both us and the imperial capital. We can easily escape from the city, but it doesn't mean that the road ahead will be easy. If I'm not wrong, the road to St. Ryuin has already been patrolled by the imperial capital soldiers. This won't change because of our stay here." Xiao Yun shook his head. They were naturally aware of the situation. The trip to St. Ryuin would definitely be filled with danger, but what did that have to do with staying for half a month? Of course there will be changes. Qin Feng smiled and shook his head. In the near future, especially in the next few days, there will be many patrols around the city of sin. After the slave hunt, there will be even more people here. Do you know why? Of course, it's to hunt us down. Long Zhan curled his lips. Qin Feng smiled and asked, "What would they think if they didn't discover us? What should we do?" "They will think that the city of sin is hiding us and go back to investigate. If they can't find anything, they will assume that we are already on our way to St. Ryuin." Qin Feng nodded and said, "If that's the case, then they will definitely continue to hunt us down. This place will be emptied of power. When that happens, we will move out and follow them." Hearing this, the few of them were stunned. This Qin Feng was too daring. Others wanted nothing more than to stay far away from them, but he actually still followed behind them. Although this was crazy, it was still a good plan. During this period of time, we will hide in the underground cave and seal the entrance. They won't be able to find us, so they will naturally go to St. Ryuin to kill us. Qin Feng said. Everyone thought about it and then nodded. They returned to the underground cave and sealed the entrance tightly. Qin Feng used his spiritual energy and used it to observe from the outside. Only when he saw that there was nothing out of the ordinary did he relax. During this period of time, they had been hiding in the underground cave and focused on training. They were worried that the people from the capital hadn't all left, so they stayed for 20 days before they decided to leave. Qin Feng first used his spiritual energy to observe the outside. After finding nothing out of the ordinary, he worked with everyone to open the entrance. Everyone walked outside and carefully observed the situation. They could clearly see that there were many footprints nearby. They weren't in a hurry to leave. Instead, they waited until night fell before they left. Following the directions on the map, they headed north and avoided some important roads and checkpoints. "Stop!" Qin Feng gestured for everyone to stop. He lay down in the bushes and looked into the distance. Before long, a few silhouettes appeared. Their shiny armor was somewhat blinding under the moonlight. Soldiers from the capital. They didn't leave? Xiao Yun and the others were shocked. Qin Feng shook his head and said in a low voice, "They should be patrolling soldiers that were temporarily formed behind us." Hearing this, everyone sighed in relief. Only now did they realize that these armored soldiers weren't very alert. If we launch a sneak attack, we should be able to get rid of them silently. Long Zhan said. If they don't threaten us, there's no need to attack. Otherwise, it will only increase the chances of us being exposed. Qin Feng shook his head. Everyone slowly retreated and circled around from another direction. In one night, they traveled hundreds of miles. All of them took small, secluded paths. Just like that, they traveled at night and rested during the day. After a week, they were already hundreds of miles away from the city of Sin. At this point, their speed slowed down, because the location of the map stopped here. The distance between the city of Sin and Saint Ruin was very far, and it was a secluded path. Even with the ability of the city leader, they couldn't find out everything. They could only draw a certain distance. From now on, we can only rely on ourselves. Qin Feng said. Without a clear path, their speed slowed down. Not only did they have to be wary of the people from the imperial capital, they also had to face the spirit beasts in the forest. Not long after, they encountered a few soldiers. After following them for a long time and confirming that they weren't regular soldiers, Qin Feng and the others attacked like lightning. They killed the soldiers and destroyed the corpses. Then, they changed into their armor and swaggered away. Qin Feng, this method of yours is really ruthless. Long Zhan grinned. I think it's crazy enough. Xiao Yun and Su Qin looked at each other and smiled bitterly. As escaped slaves, they couldn't wait to hide. Qin Feng actually dared to greet them. Needless to say, they were so scared at that time. Along the way, they encountered many search teams. Because most of these patrolling soldiers weren't regular soldiers, they weren't recorded in the army. Therefore, both sides didn't know each other. This allowed Qin Feng and the others to take advantage of this loophole. Just like that, they pretended to be searching for escaped slaves and continued to approach the north. I'll fight you. Suddenly, they heard someone yell. Immediately after, the sound of weapons colliding could be heard. Chapter 77. Impersonation without hesitation. They ran toward the source of the sound and saw a group of people fighting. 6 soldiers surrounded 2 young people, a young man and a young woman, who were about 20 years old. The 2 of them were in a difficult situation, especially the young man, who was seriously injured. You cold-blooded executioners, even if I die, I will break some of your front teeth. The young man, who was covered in blood, stood in front of the young woman and shouted, Qing Ling, leave quickly. The young woman, who was called Qing Ling, was pale, but she was stubborn. She held her long sword and didn't want to leave. If we die together, she said. Qing Ling, alas. The young man sighed angrily. Humph, you should have known that you would end up like a fugitive slave, the leader of the soldiers said coldly. He didn't waste any time and waved his sword forward. However, before he could attack, someone stopped him and said respectfully with a smile, Sir, let us deal with these small fries so that you don't have to dirty your hands. The soldier looked at that person with disdain. He knew they were trying to please him because they wanted to get the reward. However, he didn't care. He nodded and said impatiently, Kill them quickly. We have to chase after the next batch. Sir, please don't worry. I butt-face always do things quickly. The soldiers nodded and looked at the young man and woman. Their smiles disappeared immediately. What's going on? However, just as they were about to attack, a loud shout suddenly rang out, and then a few figures walked over. Buttface turned around and saw the soldiers, who were also wearing temporary armor. He said in a low voice, Can't you see we are dealing with fugitive slaves? How dare you talk to me like that? Qin Feng walked over and said angrily, Who is in charge of this place? He looked at the leader of the soldiers. The soldier frowned and said coldly, Pay attention to your status. Qin Feng coldly laughed. He walked up and exchanged glances with that soldier. After that, he slapped him with lightning speed as he spoke in anger. You are merely an ordinary soldier, yet you actually dare to speak to me in such a manner? Are you tired of living? The soldier was stunned. He was a soldier of the regular army. How dare someone hit him? Just as he was about to attack in anger, Qin Feng shouted, Do you know who I am? Come, tell me. What's your number? Who's your superior? And who's your general? I'd like to see which bastard brought out such a blind thing like you. After being yelled at by Qin Feng, that person was momentarily unsure of what to do. He knew that every time the Great Slave Expedition took place, there would always be escaped slaves everywhere. Moreover, the prestigious clans of the imperial capital would always send some of their disciples out to gain experience. In order to not attract attention, many people would act like slaves and act as a temporary army. Don't tell me he met one. Tell me, who is your commander? Qin Feng asked loudly, full of vigor. Mu Lang, General Mu, the man whispered. Uncle Mu, you're Uncle Mu's soldier. Qin Feng looked surprised and said, for Uncle Mu's sake, I won't argue with you. You know General Mu? Nonsense. Last time, when Uncle Mu played chess with my father, he even taught me a battle technique. Do you want to give it a try? The soldier quickly waved his hand and said respectfully, so you are a disciple of an aristocratic family. I have eyes but failed to recognize Mount Tai. Please forgive me. Qin Feng waved his hand and looked at the man and woman. He asked, these are the escaped slaves? Yes, they're the escaped slaves of Yi City. We have already killed 4 of them, and there are only 2 left, the soldier said respectfully. Although he still didn't know which aristocratic family this young man in front of him was from, General Mu was on good terms with several aristocratic families. Even if he didn't know, he didn't dare to offend him. Qin Feng nodded and walked to the man and woman. He looked them up and down for a while and said, some time ago, I accidentally killed my maidservant. I happen to need another one. I think this one is quite good-looking, so I kept her. Hearing that, the soldier looked troubled and said, young master, we have received a death order. If we meet any escaped slaves, we will kill them without mercy. Why? Are you doubting my decision? Qin Feng tilted his head and stared at the soldier indifferently. I wouldn't dare. The soldier quickly lowered his head and said, we will listen to young master's decision. Hearing that, Qin Feng nodded and reached out to lift the woman's chin. He smiled and said, this little girl is quite pretty. Don't touch her. The young man glared at Qin Feng and gripped the long sword in his hand tightly. Qin Feng glanced at him and stared at the woman. He said, what is your name? The woman stared at Qin Feng fiercely and said, if you want to kill me, then kill me. If I fall into your hands, I will accept it. Stubborn enough. I like it. Conquering someone like this will give me a sense of accomplishment. Qin Feng laughed loudly. Disgusting, the woman said fiercely. Qin Feng didn't care. He turned around and walked to the soldier. He said, what is your name? Lili. And I know. I will talk to Uncle Mu and transfer you to another place. Qin Feng said, let me use your sword. This man dared to scold me. I will personally chop off his head. Hearing Qin Feng's words, Lili quickly handed his sword to Qin Feng. He said with a face full of smiles, young master, where do you plan to transfer me? He couldn't contain his joy. He secretly rejoiced that he didn't provoke this young master. Otherwise, let alone a promotion, he might not even be able to keep his life. Qin Feng took the sword and turned around. He weighed it in his hand and said softly, I plan to transfer you. Transfer to where? Transfer to... Qin Feng's eyes flashed with a cold light. He suddenly turned around and waved his long sword. Pucci! Blood spurted out and Li Li's head rolled out. Transfer to hell. Qin Feng snorted coldly. When he saw Ouyang Shi and the others were cold, he shouted, what are you waiting for? His change was so fast that it caught everyone off guard. Not to mention Buttface and the others. Even Ouyang Shi and the others, who knew to act according to circumstances, didn't react in time. However, after all, they knew the plan. When Qin Feng finished speaking, they took action and stabbed their weapons into the bodies of the people next to him. 5 people were killed. The remaining Buttface was dumbfounded. What's going on? Why did they kill their own people? You are fake. Suddenly, he reacted. He quickly took out a signal flare and was about to launch it. However, his body stiffened and he couldn't move. He was tightly wrapped by Qin Feng's mind strength. Pucci! Qin Feng rushed up and slashed him in half at the waist. Deal with these corpses. After saying that, Qin Feng looked at young man and woman and said, hurry up and change into their clothes. We are leaving. Chapter 78. Exposed, the man and woman were still in a daze as they stared blankly at Qin Feng. Just a moment ago, he was still a frivolous and arrogant person, but in an instant he had turned into a cold-blooded killer. "We are escaped slaves from the city of sin." Ouyang, she walked over and gave them the battle clothes she had taken from them. She smiled and said, "This is just a way for us to hide our identities." At this moment, the man and woman finally understood. They nodded gratefully and changed into the battle clothes. Then, they quickly left with Qin Feng and the others. "Qin Feng, I didn't expect you to have so many identities." In a dense forest, Long Zhan gave Qin Feng a thumbs up with a face full of admiration. Xiao Yun and Su Qin also couldn't hide their admiration. Even Ouyang, she couldn't help but look at him. As an escaped slave, not only did he not escape, he even dared to pretend to catch other escaped slaves. A thief crying thief was nothing more than this. What was even more amazing was that he even pretended to be a descendant of an aristocratic family. He stunned a group of soldiers and, in the end, killed them effortlessly. They had never seen such a crazy person. "My heart can't take it when I'm with you." Xiao Yun smiled bitterly. "The more dangerous a place is, the safer it is. Sometimes the more dangerous a person is under certain circumstances, our biggest protection." Qin Feng smiled. Listening to their conversation, Qingling and Bei both looked at Qin Feng in shock. Was this how they came all the way here? This was too legendary. Moreover, these plans and crazy actions were all done by the youngest person in the group. This brother is really admirable. Bai shook his head and sighed. What else could he say? He didn't even dare to think about it. Unfortunately, the people who came with us were all killed, Qingling said softly. Her voice was filled with sadness. Hearing this, Bai also sighed deeply. Their group of 6 had been hunted ever since they left Yi City. In the end, only the 2 of them survived. If it wasn't for Qin Feng and the others, they wouldn't have had a good ending. Seeing this, Ouyang Shi and the others didn't know how to comfort them. After all, if it happened to them, they wouldn't be able to take it either. If you have time to grieve, why don't you think about how to survive? Qin Feng said, you should have been prepared for the worst when you were willing to become a fugitive slave. Sacrifice is inevitable, just like the 5 of us. I can't guarantee that we can all safely reach St. Ryuin. It's not just us. How many large and small cities have escaped slaves in the primitive lands? They're just like us, fighting for their mission. Won't they die? No, they'll die too. In fact, many will die. But so what? Since I've chosen this path, I'll have to bear the consequences of this path. I won't stop for anyone's death. I'll keep the sadness in my heart. What I need to do is to survive and overthrow this cruel slavery system. Only then will everyone's sacrifice not be in vain. Qin Feng's words were very cold and cruel, but they were very realistic, which made them fall into a daze. Qin Feng, if one day. Qin Feng waved his hand and interrupted Xiao Yun's words. He said, if that time really comes and someone needs to be sacrificed, then I can only say that if you have the chance to escape, don't care about emotions. Compared to the mission on our shoulders, personal emotions are not worth mentioning. The atmosphere suddenly became heavy. Looking at everyone's expressions, Qin Feng sighed in his heart. He could only say this, but he couldn't let them be too optimistic. Although their journey had been very smooth, he knew that if they continued to pretend like this, there would be an end. They couldn't take advantage of every opportunity to avoid all the blockades. A real fierce battle was unavoidable. Right, you should have a map to St. Ryuin, right? Qin Feng asked. Bei nodded, took out the sheepskin scroll, and opened it. With the help of the firelight, they analyzed the next path. Brother Qin Feng, I think we should unite more fugitives like us, Bei said. Ouyang Shi and the others nodded. Ouyang Shi said, that's a good idea. After all, there's strength in numbers. Hearing this, Qin Feng was silent for a while, then shook his head and said, we'll talk about this later. With a clear route, everyone's speed increased a lot. Although they occasionally encountered some search teams, they passed through them without any mishaps. 3 days later, they were gradually approaching the northern part of the primitive land. At this point, they stopped. Yi City didn't have a clear map to St. Ryuin, so they could only stop here. The people from the 10 great cities should know how to get to St. Ryuin. We should find them and work together, Ouyang, she said. Qin Feng's eyes flickered. In the end, he said, let's see how lucky we are. We can't place all our hopes on others. If there's no path, we'll find a way. Everyone nodded and continued to head north. Suddenly, Qin Feng's expression changed. He shouted, careful, there's an enemy attack. Everyone's expression changed. At the same time, a sharp sound pierced through the air. Clang, clang, clang. Qin Feng's mental power that had been spreading outside suddenly exploded. It turned into a mental blade and collided with the iron arrows. Suddenly, the sound of metal hitting metal could be heard. After being hit, the trajectory of the iron arrows changed, and they all missed. Rumble. Then, the ground trembled slightly, and smoke rose from the ground. Ouyang Shi and the others' expressions changed. They saw the iron arrows falling to the ground and creating a big hole. Obviously, if they were hit, they would die without a doubt. Rustle. The branches in the distance trembled. A few masked soldiers jumped out. Each of them was holding a black longbow in their hands. Who dares to be so bold to hit me? Lu Shicheng. Qin Feng shouted. He stared at them angrily and said, who are you? Tell me your names. At the same time, he secretly transmitted to them, our identities should be exposed. Prepare for battle. Everyone held their weapons tightly and nodded solemnly. Seeing that they did not answer, Qin Feng walked up and put on the arrogant look of an aristocratic family's disciple. Which army are you from? Tell me your names. I'll let my Uncle Mu, General Mu, punish you. Let me tell you, my Uncle Mu is whoosh. Before he could finish his words, a sharp iron sword shot towards him. Qin Feng was already on guard and dodged. His mental power spread and turned into a long spear, shooting over. At the same time, he rushed over. Leave this person to me. You guys deal with the others. The leader ordered. The others immediately separated and rushed to Ouyang Shi and the others. He's a mental power master. The masked soldier who stayed in the same place was shocked. A pair of eyes that were more beautiful than a woman stared at Qin Feng. Boom! Qin Feng punched out, but it missed. His face changed. He quickly gathered his mental power behind his back. At the same time, a slender white palm fell. Qin Feng rushed forward. At the same time, the power of water was released. It turned into water snakes and attacked the soldier, resolving his crisis. Chapter 79. Big Misunderstanding. Qin Feng's face was solemn. Water snakes coiled around his body and stabbed forward. Not only did that person not retreat, but he also rushed forward. He was as agile as a monkey and dodged all of Qin Feng's attacks. Xiao Xiao. However, just as he was about to get close, a small spiritual blade suddenly shot out. It was too sudden and that person could not dodge it. He could only use his spiritual energy to deflect the spiritual blade. Qin Feng slapped out with his palms, and 2 water pillars shot out. That person was expressionless. He waved his arm and shot out a fierce spiritual energy, shattering the water pillars. He then continued forward. Qin Feng sneered and formed a seal with his hands. With a low shout, 2 crescent moons suddenly appeared in the 2 scattered water pillars. The crescent moons collided with each other and instantly produced a strong explosive force. That person could not dodge in time and was sent flying. Xiao, on the left, a spiritual weapon pierced towards him. That person slapped the air and spiritual energy gushed out, shattering all the spiritual weapons. Whoosh! Suddenly, 7 to 8 water snakes appeared in the sky and swooped down ferociously. His body was in midair, and that person could not circulate his spiritual energy. He could only use all the spiritual energy he could. Using this force, his body quickly fell. However, a black shadow was faster than him. Like a bolt of lightning, it quickly hit that person's lower abdomen, and the 2 of them fell heavily. Before landing on the ground, Qin Feng twisted his body and rode on the waist of that person. Both of his palms fiercely slammed down, and a ferocious force spread out. That person's body trembled, and a muffled groan came out from his throat. As he landed on the ground with a crash, Qin Feng fiercely threw 2 punches at that person's body. Then, he flipped that person over. His legs nimbly wrapped around that person's waist. One arm locked that person's neck, and the other hand passed under that person's armpit and pressed on his chest. It's a girl. When the palm fell, Qin Feng immediately realized that it was a girl after the accident with Ouyang Jing. However, he did not show any mercy and even pinched her hard. In a battle of life and death, there was no difference between men and women. Since he wanted to kill them, he did not care about the difference between men and women. Ah! A sharp cry came from the woman's throat. Shut up! Qin Feng fiercely punched her lower abdomen, and then his big hand pressed down again. He shouted loudly, "All of you stop, or I'll kill her." Ouyang Shi and the others were obviously not a match for these soldiers, and this person seemed to be the leader. Qin Feng could only use her as a hostage, otherwise, he would have already killed her. The battle over there stopped, and several soldiers glared at Qin Feng. "If you don't want her to die, let my friends go. Otherwise, she will be the first to die." As he spoke, his mental power spread out and transformed into many small weapons, which were distributed to the few fatal acupoints of the controlled woman. "Let her go." A soldier roared in exasperation. His eyes were red, and he wanted nothing more than to kill Qin Feng. Qin Feng lay on the ground and wrapped the woman in his arms. His eyes signaled to Ouyang Shi and the others. They quickly ran over, and at the same time, weapons fell beside the woman. "Take another step and she will die," Qin Feng shouted coldly. The man immediately stopped, but his eyes were still staring at Qin Feng. "We don't want to make things worse. I just want to know which unit you are from. How dare you try to kill me?" "Lu Shicheng, my enemies sent you," Qin Feng asked. The soldier didn't reply, but panted heavily. "You don't want to say it, huh?" I, Lu Shicheng, have done a lot of things. Why don't you go to the imperial capital and ask around? Do you think I'm called the little demon king, Lu Shicheng, for nothing? You want to kill me with just you? Dream on. However, if you can turn over a new leaf, it's not like I can't let you go. What to do is up to you. Senior brother, don't worry about me. Hurry up and leave. Have you forgotten our previous agreement? At this time, the woman who was restrained by Qin Feng suddenly shouted. The soldier was stunned. He shook his head in pain and said loudly, "Junior sister, how can I leave you behind? Even if I die, I want to die with you." "You." The woman was furious. She gritted her teeth and said to Qin Feng, "What do you want? Either you cripple your own meridians and I can let you live, or you turn over a new leaf. Tell me, which enemy of mine sent you to kill me?" Qin Feng said. Seeing that Qin Feng was getting further and further away from Lu Shicheng's path, Ouyang, she curled her lips. She had already been seen through. What was the point of pretending? "Well, I think we should shut up." Qin Feng glanced at Ouyang Shi and shouted, "How can a lowly servant like you speak here? Do you think I, the little demon king Lu Shicheng, am so easy to provoke? I have always been the only one who can bully others. Whoever dares to bully me, I will repay them tenfold." Ouyang Shi's face twitched. He actually called her a lowly servant. "I will give you one more chance. As long as you stand on my side, I can let bygones be bygones. Really, Lu Shicheng, as long as we tell you who sent us, you will let us go." The woman said, "Of course, but the premise is that you can't make a move on me." Qin Feng said, "Okay, I will tell you. It was that person from the Chu clan who paid us. Chu clan, that chaotic battle, actually dared to make a move on me." Qin Feng was so angry that his teeth itched. Seeing him like this, Ouyang Shi and the others were speechless. This guy was really addicted to pretending. Even they were about to believe him. However, those people also seemed to believe him. Several people's hearts lit up. They admired Qin Feng from the bottom of their hearts. It seemed that the other party was not sure of their identity. Qin Feng's perseverance in pretending was really effective. Several people looked at each other and sighed in relief. As long as they believed that Qin Feng was Lu Shicheng, then naturally they would not make a move on him. Can you let us go now? The woman said. Qin Feng's eyes flickered. He was a little embarrassed. They really believed that he was Lu Shicheng, but this name was just made up. How could he know if there was a Lu Shicheng in the imperial capital? Just as he was hesitating, he suddenly felt a powerful spiritual energy emanating from the woman in his arms. The degree of ferocity made him shudder. At the critical moment, Qin Feng used the 100 Calamity Heaven Devouring art. A powerful devouring power erupted and swallowed the spiritual energy emitted from the woman's body. What's going on? The woman exclaimed and quickly restrained her spiritual energy. However, it was still continuously absorbed by the other party. I knew you couldn't be trusted. Qin Feng coldly snorted and dispersed the devouring power. This woman was their life-saving talisman. They couldn't kill her. Junior sister, stop pretending. With that, the soldier took off his battle clothes and ordered the others to do the same. What was going on? This time, it was Qin Feng's turn to be stunned. Heavenly Sun City, Fushimi. This was a long-haired young man with a handsome face and a spirited gaze. He stared at Lu Shicheng and spoke. Lu Shicheng, release my junior sister and we will mind our own business. If not, I dare to guarantee that none of you here will be able to survive. Since surrendering means death anyway, we might as well fight it out. You have two choices now. 1, kill my junior sister, and then I'll kill all of you. 2, let go of my junior sister, and everyone will leave. We won't kill you. You're from Heavenly Sun City? Ouyang Shi, Bai Yi, and the others asked in a daze. Fushimi glanced at them and ignored them. Instead, he looked at Qin Feng and asked, Lu Shicheng, what's your choice? How can I believe you? Qin Feng said. I believe you. Ouyang Shi said. Looking at Qin Feng, who was tightly restraining the woman, the corner of her mouth twitched. She couldn't hold back anymore and shouted, Qin Feng, why are you still pretending to be Lu Shicheng? Heavenly Sun City is one of the top 10 super cities. They're the same as us. Chapter 80. 9 Spiritual Mountains. I'm from Sin City, they're from Yi City. After taking off their battle suits, Ouyang Shi and the others decisively retreated far away, leaving Qin Feng alone in the wind in a mess. At this moment, Qin Feng's expression was quite interesting. He felt as if he was struck by lightning, charred on the outside and tender on the inside. His whole body was indescribably uncomfortable. There were actually people like them, pretending to be soldiers who were hunting the escaped slaves. Moreover, the two of them had met. Most importantly, what was he doing now? Wasn't this a trap? Seeing Ouyang Shi and the rest hide far away with an indifferent expression, Qin Feng's mouth twitched. Not far away, Fushimi recovered from his shock. His body trembled slightly, and the corner of his eyes twitched violently, as if he had been electrocuted. The veins on his forehead bulged. How long are you going to hug me for? The girl's cold voice came. Qin Feng's scalp went numb, and he quickly let go. He stood up and patted the dust off his body. As if nothing had happened, he said, So, it was a misunderstanding. If that's the case, we'll meet again. With that, Qin Feng turned and left without looking back. Qin Feng, they're from the 10 great cities. We should go with them. Ouyang Shi pulled Qin Feng. Her face was full of smiles, and Qin Feng couldn't help but want to rub his feet against her. He sighed in his heart, turned around, and asked, Are you really from Heavenly Sun City? Fushimi looked coldly at Qin Feng and said, I really want to kill you. You're afraid you don't have the ability? Qin Feng laughed in disdain, glanced at the girl, and said, She's an example. You want to try it too. Although this Fushimi was strong and had reached the late stage of the Pioneer Sea realm, he was not the same as when he fought with Inren. After successfully opening his Sea of Qi, his strength increased greatly. If they really fought, he was confident that he could take down Fushimi. Is that so? You want to try? Fushimi took a step forward, and a ferocious spiritual energy swept out. His aura was much stronger than Ouyang Shi's. Interesting. Qin Feng didn't care at all. If I can subdue that woman, why would I be afraid of you? Letcher, if you didn't sneak attack me, would you have succeeded? The woman spat and snorted. In a battle of life and death, we don't talk about the process, only the result. The result is that I subdued you. Qin Feng shrugged. Then try to subdue me too, Fushimi said. Qin Feng slowly narrowed his eyes. Seeing that the two of them were about to fight, Ouyangshi hurriedly stepped forward and said, "This is all a misunderstanding. There's no need to fight. We should think of a way to avoid the seal and enter the Saint Ryuin. Join forces with you?" Fushimi glanced at Qin Feng's group with disdain. "The city of Sin, the city of Yi, you are all barbarian cities. Why do you have to join forces with us?" Hearing this, Ouyangxi's face turned angry. "We are from a remote area. But don't you forget who we subdued." It would have been better if she didn't mention it. Once she did, Fushimi's killer's intent intensified. "If you want to fight, think about the consequences." Qin Feng's body shook as his spiritual energy seeped out. At the same time, his spiritual energy transformed into a long spear. The force of water wrapped around his body and turned into a water snake. He said, "You are strong, but we are not easy to deal with. If we really fight, I can guarantee that we will be discovered before the victor is decided. Let go, senior brother. Don't forget our mission." The woman shook her head and looked at Qin Feng. "If you can make it to the Saint Ruin alive, we will settle our debts." Qin Feng shrugged and replied, "Don't be too confident. Don't think that just because you're from a big city, you're better than us. We are all slaves who escaped. Who is better than who?" The woman was too lazy to argue and led the group away. "We should go too. The commotion here will attract people's attention," Qin Feng said and turned to leave. "What a pity. We missed it." Ouyangshi sighed. It would be a lie to say that it wasn't a pity. After all, people from a big city would know which path to the Saint Ryuin was easier. It's better to rely on ourselves than others. Qin Feng shook his head. The group picked up the armor on the ground and slowly entered the forest. Without a clear path, they could only slowly explore. The closer they got to the Saint Ryuin, the more enemies there were and the stronger they were. After crossing this mountain range, the Saint Ryuin will be in front of us, Bai Yi said as she looked at the endless mountain range. This mountain range won't be easy to cross, Xiaoyan said. Everyone knew that this was the last barrier. Once they passed through, they would be received by the students of the Saint Ryuin. At that time, they would be safe. However, the imperial capital also knew this, so they had set up layers of blockades in this last mountain range. Looking at the huge mountain range that looked like a sleeping azure dragon, Qin Feng's eyes were deep. Divine light flickered in his eyes. These days, he had gained some understanding of the terrain of the primitive lands. This was the Nine-Spirit Mountain Range, one of the 3 forbidden areas of the primitive lands. It was said that no one had been able to find out what was inside the Nine-Spirit Mountain Range. Many people had entered, but without any accidents, they either went mad or disappeared, never to be seen again. There were even rumors that the imperial capital's god had investigated it, but no news came out. Later, they only knew that the god had gone into seclusion for many years before reappearing. From this, it could be seen how terrifying the Nine-Spirit Mountain Range was. Even a god wouldn't dare to enter it. They were only at the edge of the Nine-Spirit Mountain Range, the Bald-Tail Mountain Range. They hadn't really touched the Nine-Spirit Mountain Range. The Bald-Tail Mountain Range wasn't a true mountain range, but rather the tail end of the Nine-Spirit Mountain Range. Qin Feng was considering whether or not they should take the path between the Bald-Tail Mountain Range and the Nine-Spirit Mountain Range. If necessary, they could enter the Nine-Spirit Mountain Range. The imperial capital had set up a clear dividing line between the 2 mountain ranges. This side of the dividing line was a safe area, while the other side was a place of death. Since ancient times, no one had dared to step into this dividing line. If they took this line, the imperial capital's threat would be greatly reduced. But if they did, they would have to face the unknown dangers of the Nine-Spirit Mountain Range. Qin Feng didn't know what to do. After thinking for a while, Qin Feng told the others his idea. "You're crazy. You're looking to die." The others stared with wide eyes. They didn't even dare to think about going along the Nine-Spirit Mountain Range. Didn't I say that the edges of the Nine-Spirit Mountain Range aren't dangerous? But the Bald-Tail Mountain Range is the edge of the Nine-Spirit Mountain Range. It's not a real mountain range. It's just that it's been investigated and confirmed to be a safe area of the Nine-Spirit Mountain Range. The others shook their heads. They wouldn't dare take this path even if they were beaten to death. The legends of the Nine-Spirit Mountain Range were too terrifying. If they entered, no one would have a good ending. After discussing for a long time, they still didn't know how to cross the Bald-Tail Mountain Range. After all, they knew nothing about this place. They didn't even know where to go. If they entered recklessly, they would be surrounded by the Imperial Capital's army. Chapter 81. The sneak attack failed. Qin Feng's group walked through the forest, cautiously observing their surroundings. Although they were still a few miles away from the real Nine-Spirit Mountain Range, they still felt uneasy. Occasionally, they would see the Imperial Capital's army. Fortunately, Qin Feng's spiritual power allowed them to avoid them in advance, so they didn't really encounter them. These are the true warriors who have been on the battlefield. Their hearts jumped. These people were far from the temporary army they had encountered before. Each one of them had climbed out of piles of corpses on the battlefield. Their bodies emitted an austere aura. Their journey was more daunting than dangerous, and they didn't encounter any danger. Whether it was the native spirit beasts or human warriors, they avoided them in advance. This was the advantage of being a spiritual master. They could silently investigate without being discovered. And, suddenly, Qin Feng's eyes narrowed. Under his spiritual power, he sensed a weak spiritual power fluctuation 1,000 meters away. He signaled to them, then carefully approached. This was a relatively open area. There were dozens of people surrounding a dozen people, engaging in a chaotic battle. But what surprised Qin Feng was that these people weren't all soldiers. Most of them were wearing servant clothes. They should be the disciples of an aristocratic family who came out to gain experience, said Bei, her voice cold. Qin Feng nodded. He already knew that during each slave hunt, many families in the imperial capital would send out some outstanding disciples to gain experience and hunt down escaped slaves. Most of these people were wearing servant clothes. Clearly, they weren't part of the imperial capital's army. Qin Feng, what should we do? Ouyang Shi and the others looked at Qin Feng. These days, Qin Feng had led them here, resolving danger after danger. In their hearts, they had long since regarded Qin Feng as the leader of this group. These people are all escaped slaves. We should think of a way to help them. But the people surrounding them aren't weak. With just a few of us, we can't shake them. These servants were not weak. The weakest of them was at the Sea Expansion Realm, and there were even some at the late stage of the Sea Expansion Realm. In addition, there were 5 soldiers from the army. They were an even bigger threat. It could be seen that these 5 soldiers alone were enough to suppress most of the escaped slaves. If we don't take care of those warriors, we won't be able to save them. If we can split them up and break them apart one by one, it might work. Listening to their suggestions, Qin Feng secretly shook his head. Some of these methods were indeed feasible, but they would take too long and require a precise plan. They simply did not have the time to arrange so many things. Qin Feng's eyes flashed. He suddenly saw that on the other side of the battlefield, there was a group of people that hadn't moved yet. And in this group of people, there was a youth in golden robes. Looking at his posture, he was like a moon surrounded by stars. Qin Feng guessed that this person should be a disciple of some aristocratic family. Qin Feng's eyes flickered for a while, and he whispered in their ears, "Are you crazy?" Everyone's eyes widened. "This is the safest method," Qin Feng said. "If it succeeds, not only can we save these people, but we can also catch them all in one fell swoop." They stared blankly at him. This idea was simply too crazy. It was crazier than anything they had done before. If this spread out, it would definitely cause a huge uproar. This matter may have very terrible consequences. For us, the worst result is death. Is there anything worse than that? Qin Feng asked. They were silent for a moment. After a long while, Long Zhan gritted his teeth and said, "I'll do it." If it succeeds, even if I die, it'll be worth it. The few of them looked at each other and then nodded. Young Master Gene, the quality of these escaped slaves is too low. There's no need for you to make a move. That's right. What kind of status does young Master Gene have? Ordinary escaped slaves are not worthy of young Master Gene to make a move. Only the escaped slaves of the top 10 super cities are worthy of being young Master Gene's opponent. A group of people were there flattering, nodding their heads and bowing. They were the perfect henchmen. The youth who was called young Master Gene had a cold smile on his face. The bloody massacre in front of him was nothing more than a game to him. Still haven't found the escaped slaves in the super cities? He asked with a smile on his face. There's some news. A servant with a pointy mouth and monkey cheek smiled and said, the people of the Kong family seem to have found the traces of Tianyang Chang's escaped slaves. They have already brought a few wolf rider to chase after them. Tianyang Cheng? Young Master Gene smiled coldly and said, quickly get rid of these people. We'll hurry over. At this moment, several spirit power bolts shot over and sent them flying. Several people rushed over. You lowly escaped slaves, you actually dare to sneak attack young Master Gene. The pointy mouth and monkey cheeks youth shouted to the few people beside him, you guys kill them. Immediately, the group of people surrounding young Master Gene rushed up and blocked the group of people who suddenly appeared. A few more came. How interesting. Young Master Gene didn't panic at all. He looked at the group of people with interest. His gaze moved, then stared at Ouyang Shi. A hint of surprise flashed in his eyes as he said, leave that woman for me. Pucci. As soon as his voice fell, a head was thrown high up and blood spurted out. Young Master Jin's pupils shrank. In fact, when his voice fell, he felt that something was wrong. He quickly rolled on the ground and saw the body of the servant beside him split into two. What a strange attack. Young Master Gene felt a chill down his spine. If he didn't instinctively feel that something was wrong, he wouldn't have ended up much better than the servant. Just as he got up, young Master Gene only felt a blur in front of his eyes. Then, a fierce force covered his face. He shouted in a low voice and punched out. Golden light surged and collided heavily with the fist that suddenly attacked. Bang! Young Master Gene retreated a few steps before stabilizing his body. His face was gloomy as he stared at the person who attacked. Qin Feng's face flashed with a touch of astonishment. This young Master Gene looked spoiled, but his strength really couldn't be underestimated. Under his sneak attack, not only did he avoid the spiritual killing move, he even blocked the close combat attack. But he was only at the middle stage of the Pioneer Sea realm. A cultivator at this level, let alone sneak attack, even if he fought with his full strength, it was impossible for him to only retreat a few steps. Qin Feng's face gradually became heavy. He knew that his evaluation of these aristocratic family's disciples was too low. These people were not flowers in a greenhouse. Their strong foundation was enough to make them perfect in every realm, and they could look down on people of the same realm. An early-stage Pioneer Sea realm slave dares to sneak attack me. Young Master Jin's face was full of disdain and disgust. He said, but you have angered me. I will give you the punishment of tearing you apart with my own hands. Chapter 82. Hostage Xin Feng was overjoyed. He was afraid that the other party wouldn't attack him. Young Master Jin's entire body was covered in a golden light. His fist was as fast as lightning as it blasted towards Xin Feng. The golden light engulfed the entire area, and it was filled with a ferocious aura. Xin Feng didn't dodge, but faced it head-on. Bang! The two fists collided, and young Master Jin's body trembled, while Xin Feng staggered back. Very good, you're a good slave. You can actually block one of my fists. Young Master Jin nodded, but soon shook his head, his eyes filled with regret. Unfortunately, if you didn't sneak attack me, I would have taken you as my punching bag. As soon as he finished speaking, he didn't hold back and quickly attacked Qin Feng. Facing young Master Jin's barrage of attacks, Qin Feng only exchanged a few blows before choosing to dodge. Although this young Master Gene was loathsome, his strength was indeed formidable. Moreover, he had clearly received good nurturing and had the support of many heavenly treasures. His strength was even stronger than ordinary mid-sea expansion experts. However, for Qin Feng, this was all. Although young Master Gene was strong, it was still within his range of tolerance. He dodged because he wanted to see what kind of ability this young master of an aristocratic family had. Bang! After another exchange, Qin Feng retreated a few steps before barely stabilizing himself. Although young Master Gene didn't move, his eyes were extremely gloomy. After so long, he still couldn't completely take down this slave. Your strength is not bad, and I admire it. I'll give you a chance. Be my sparring partner. Young Master Gene stared at Qin Feng, then waved his hand and said to the servants who had rushed over to help him, I'll deal with this cheap slave myself. Young Master Gene, this cheap slave doesn't deserve it. You dare to attack me? Interesting. Young Master Gene smiled and said, Cheap slave, how about it? Will you accept my charity? Qin Feng looked around and said, With just you, can you beat me? If I hadn't deliberately held back, you would have been killed by me. Good, very good. When young Master Gene heard this, he laughed instead of getting angry. Hee, I don't know how long it's been since I've been rejected. Although he was smiling, the killing intent in his eyes became even more intense. He didn't know how many slaves were jealous of his offer, but the slave in front of him, whom he slightly admired, not only refused, but also despised him. This made him lose some face. Layers of golden halos emanated from his body as a powerful aura rippled out. Qin Feng narrowed his eyes slightly. As expected of a disciple of a major clan, the treatment he received was indeed different. He had grasped quite a number of earth arts and battle techniques, and his combat prowess was far superior to the enslaved people of the same level. This was not to say that the slaves were weak, but that the cultivation efforts of both sides were different, and the cultivation resources could not be mentioned in the same breath. Take Bei, for example. He was also at the middle stage of the sea expansion realm, but in Qin Feng's eyes, this young Master Gene was still superior. After all, the cultivation resources provided by Yi City's 100 clans were far inferior to that of young Master Jin's clan. And these things that they risked their lives to exchange for, in the eyes of others, might not even be worth a glance. It was like two people with equal strength, one with a saber and the other with bare hands. How could they fight? But Qin Feng was not in this category. His eyes narrowed slightly, and his mental power silently spread out. Ouyang, she could not hold on any longer, and he had to quickly subdue young Master Gene. Qin Feng quickly rushed over. Using the Fist Emperor's 3 tyrants, 3 punches overlapped and blasted towards young Master Gene. The latter smiled disdainfully and similarly punched out, golden brilliance sweeping out. But in the next moment, his expression changed. In this attack, he was actually forced back. Similarly, Qin Feng was not in a good state. Intense pain came from his fist, and there was blood on the ground. Although he had the upper hand, it was not obvious. And this was the result of him using the Fist Emperor's 3 tyrants. I can't drag this out any longer. The power of water turned into a water snake, quickly wrapping around young Master Jin's body. At the same time, the mental power that had already been prepared turned into a big hand, holding young Master Gene tightly. Then he rushed over as fast as lightning. Before the latter could shake off the restraints, a palm containing powerful spiritual power reached for his throat. Get lost! Young Master Gene shouted angrily, and golden light surged out from his body. But in the next second, his expression changed wildly, and he revealed a look of disbelief. His spiritual power was actually absorbed by the other party's palm. The spiritual power in his body was even more uncontrollably surging towards the palm. From Qin Feng's attack to young Master Gene being subdued, everything happened in a flash. By the time the servants reacted, it was already too late. Lowly slave, let go of young Master Gene. A few servants shouted angrily, threatening Qin Feng. Boom! Suddenly, a strong, murderous aura erupted, and a sharp spear tip pierced over, and a sharp sound came from the air. Qin Feng's pupils contracted, and his mental power quickly spread out, attached to the tip of the spear, and blocked it. The spear pierced the air, and the soldier was stunned. Just as he was about to attack again, Qin Feng coldly shouted, "If you move again, I dare not guarantee that young master's head is still on his neck." The soldier did not dare to act rashly. A pair of sharp eyes stared at Qin Feng and shouted, "Let go of young Master Jin." Qin Feng ignored him, but looked at young Master Jin and said, "Let's make a deal. Let those people go." "Humph." Young Master Jin coldly snorted and said, "Do you dare to kill me? If I die, none of you will be able to survive." Hearing this, Qin Feng laughed and said, "If I don't kill you, will you let us go? If I must die, do you think I will be happy to let a noble young Master Jin like you be buried with us?" After saying that, the power of devouring intensified, and more than half of the spiritual power was swallowed by Qin Feng. Young Master Jin's face gradually turned pale. "All of you stop. Let them go." Young Master Jin shouted. He was really afraid. Who was he? He was the son of a noble family. The lives of these slaves, added together, could not compare to his. Only a fool would perish together with these lowly slaves. With his order, those people stopped. Ouyang Shi and the others gathered behind Qin Feng. "Do you know where to go?" Qin Feng secretly transmitted to Ouyang Shi and the others. "But you," Ouyang Shi said worriedly. "Don't worry, I have a way to escape." Qin Feng shook his head and said, "Hurry up and leave." Seeing this, everyone did not dare to hesitate and quickly left. "Can you let me go now?" Qin Feng slapped him and said, "Be obedient. When it's time to let you go, I will naturally let you go." Young Master Jin was stunned by the slap. He stared blankly at Qin Feng. Who was he? He was the young master of the Jin clan. His status was frighteningly high, but today he was slapped by a slave. This made his chest explode with anger, but he did not dare to resist. "That's good." Seeing that he was no longer struggling, Qin Feng nodded. He glanced behind him and estimated that it was about time. He slapped his palm on young Master Jin's chest and lifted him up. With a turn, he tossed him out. Boom! Young Master Jin's body flipped in midair. After landing, he smashed into a large group of people. "Young Master Jin, are you okay?" A group of servants quickly surrounded him. "What the hell are you all standing there for? Chase after him and kill all these slaves. Leave that slave for me. I want to torture him bit by bit." Young Master Jin roared. He took out a large number of pills from his bosom and stuffed them into his mouth. He stared at the direction Qin Feng ran with hatred. You're tuning in to the Warrior Lore YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.